AGP, are you ready? Yes. Okay, great. Just before I call the meeting to order, last time I read a quotation before we got started, and I'm going to read another one. Today's quotation comes from our general manager, because I asked him if he wanted to share a little story, that this would be a good time, and I would invite all the directors, if there is something that you would like to set a tone with a meeting, with a short, please just send it along to me and we'll get going. So this one is from Ephesians 4:29, and this comes from Mr. Gruber. The Bible, but via Mr. Gruber. Let no unwholesome word proceed from your mouth, but only such a word as is good for edification, according to the need of the moment, that it may give grace to those who hear. Thank you very much. I call this meeting of the Board of Directors of the Cambria Community Services District to order. Would you please join me in the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. And we do have a quorum. Vice President Berenger is not going to be here today, but we do have the other four directors all here. Are there any deletions or changes to the agenda that anybody would like to make? Mr. Gruber, are you all good with the agenda?
Yes, Madam President.
Okay. Right on. Then we shall move straight up into announcements. If you would like to make any public comment on any items, whether it's on the agenda or not, there's little slips in the entryway. Please put your name on one and give it to Ms. Madrid there at the end. First up, we're going to have Public Safety, the Sheriff's Department report. Commander Vogue.
Good afternoon. Jim Vogue from Coast Station. If you look at during this last month in the Cambria area, we had 85 calls for service. That's a little bit down, which is always a good thing. 11 suspicious acts or suspects or vehicles, which is pretty much down also. Only 3 phone scams. One was PG&E needed a personal account information to update your file. The other one was we kidnapped your grandchild and send money quick. And the other one was a woman in Mexico was being tortured and kidnapped, and she was crying in the background, and we need money fast to stop the pain. So anyway, these kidnapping ones are all becoming more popular lately. The other thing, a lot of these things on phone scams, what they always direct you to do is buy gift cards and provide the number on the back. And I was at Best Buy the other day, and the security just tipped me off, and he said, this is his 3rd trip, and he's buying gift cards. And I walked up to him, and he had about $10, $50 gift cards in his hand. And I said, are you being phone scammed? He says, no, I like electronics, and but they said it was his 3rd trip to the store. So I tried to get him to open up, but I don't know what it was about. So he didn't cooperate anymore. We had 18 disturbing the peace. It's about normal. 2 petty theft calls, no grand theft calls, 19 alarms. All of them were false. 2 burglary calls. One was a car burglary at Moonstone Beach, I'll talk to you about in just a minute. And another one was a trespass suspect, but the people knew the trespass suspect because they had given her permission to live there, and then they revoked the permission, and then she decided to come back, and that was the other call. So on the 29th of May outside Coast Union High School, now this does not reflect the high school. This was on the street right adjacent to the high school. At about midnight, deputies observed a car parked there. Both subjects appear to be hiding in the car when the deputies went by. They had multiple syringes, tar heroin, methamphetamine pipes. They're known to both the deputies, and both of them had felony warrants, and they were arrested for that on the 29th. On June 4th at the Firestone Inn on Moonstone Beach, a visitor's Samsung tablet was stolen from the rental vehicle. She indicated the car was locked, but there was no evidence of forced entry. On the 12th, 5800 block of Sunbury, and some of you have probably already heard about this before. I know it's been talked about in the community. Between 9 p.m. and 8 in the morning, someone took the owner's patio furniture from the front porch. One was a love seat and one chair was taken. They're black and gray. They're black with gray dashes, and they had purple and red pillows. And they left, I think, one chair there. And this isn't that common, but, you know, if something's on a front porch and it's not locked down, it can move. On the 24th of June, 2700 block of Newton, we responded to a fight in progress. The person that reported it was gone. The, quote, victim was gone, and we only had the suspect left, and he said, "What fight?" And he did have blood that was, or we found blood in the street. He said, "No, I just had a verbal argument with my girlfriend's cousin, and she's taking him home." So the girlfriend came back, and we questioned her, and she said, "No, there was just a verbal argument, but she had blood spatter on her shirt." They looked in her car. There were some blood drops on her car. They said, "Where's your cousin live?" They went there, and he had a busted nose and blood all over his shirt. But in the end, you know, it's a family affair, and nobody wanted to take any criminal actions on that. So that's the report. Any questions at all?
Directors? Nope, I think
Okay.
we're good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
All right, next item is the fire chief's report.
Madam President and Board, Jonathan Gibson will be given the report instead of Chief Hollingsworth.
I didn't think you looked like
Yes,
Chief
no need to
Hollingsworth.
introduce
Welcome.
myself. So Chief Hollingsworth is on vacation, so I'm here in his stead. But
Welcome.
good afternoon, Madam President, members of the board. So for the month of May, we ran 68 emergencies. 83% of that approximately was for local residents, and about 17% of that for non-locals. And then we had some fire hydrant maintenance work done, and so our total count now is at 194 completed, so happy about that. And then probably the biggest news was the fact that we had a structure fire on Pinewood back on May 29th, and that was a good stop by the fire crews to keep it contained to that residence itself. The occupant did suffer some moderate burns and was transported to a nearby hospital, and the cause of the fire is still under investigation, so hopefully we get some answers to that. And then some other stuff coming out is PG&E. They're kind of introducing some delivery changes secondary to the major fires from 2017. So they're looking at staging equipment more advantageously to respond sooner to assist fire or emergency crews for fire type incidents. And then also they're looking at maybe doing some rolling brownouts and blackouts and just shutting down the power grid in some areas due to severe weather or fire conditions. So we've also got it looks like Director Pearson and Chief Hollingsworth went down and participated in a grant fund workshop down in Ventura. That was back on June 11th, it looks like. And then we were able to get our SAFER grant application submitted. And then I believe that you got the fire chief's report, so there's more details on how that funding works and how that will pay out if we were to award and the board decided to accept it. So I think that's probably it. Any questions on any of this stuff?
I just have a quick question on the coordination with PG&E. I assume that there's somebody on their end that if there is an emergency that our department contacts, or are they just automatically looped in with 911? Or because I think this is partially a result of the Santa Rosa fires.
Yeah,
the change in policy.
So basically, we as emergency services, we do have an emergency line to utility companies. For us, it's PG&E, And so we do have that number at our disposal. We call them and we get directly dispatched to their emergency center, as opposed to the general public can call an emergency number, but it's more customer service based. So yeah, we get results faster by talking to our special hotline. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, that helps.
Okay,
Thank
sure.
you. Director Pearson?
Yeah, two things. One, you had a cliff rescue this last month. Do you know, or you intimate?
I'm not sure. I recently got back from vacation too, so
Okay.
I'm not totally up to speed on all the incidents we did run.
Okay. The second one that I think you are familiar with is CAL FIRE is supposed to go around and inspect all of the areas around the houses that
Improved
that are there.
parcels, yes.
Improved parcels.
Uh-huh.
And it appears to me they did not do that again this year.
Typically, they have a July 1st deadline. That's what they've been shooting for the last couple of years, is usually early July. And so they typically go out, they do inspections, and if people are not compliant, they get a form saying, hey, you're in violation for these reasons, you have this date and time to get it corrected, or further action will be taken. And so they'll usually do a follow-up inspection probably after July 1st. And then they're very compassionate, if you will, in how they respond to people. They give them a lot of time to be compliant unless they deem it to be a severe fire hazard, and then they'll typically take a little bit stronger stance on making sure it's done in a timely manner.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you for your report. This is the time for public comment on items not on the agenda. I do have some requests to speak. If you would like to speak on an item that's not on the agenda, please go grab a slip and fill it out and turn it in. We're going to start with Christine. Christine, you're on the consent agenda, right? Okay. Okay, so we're going to start with Debbie Soto, followed by Laurel Stewart. You'll have 3 minutes apiece.
Yes, I just have some more letters to deliver and read a couple for the moving of the Santa Rosa Schoolhouse. And this one is from Linda Finley, Stewardship Travel Ambassador for the Cambria Tourism Board. She says, "It is with enthusiasm that I write my endorsement of the plan to move the old schoolhouse that originally was located on Santa Rosa Creek. Having an open space location on Main Street that features a very historical building as the centerpiece is a wonderful attraction for the East Village. The Cambria Historical Society members will capably manage its maintenance as they have so beautifully done for many years with the Guthrie Bianchini House. I personally know residents that attended this school and think that restoring our classic town's indelible history is a true and meaningful asset for our visitors and residents alike. Moving the old schoolhouse from its current location to the west end to a more permanent location near Santa Rosa Creek at the entrance to town." And one more letter. This is from Robert Soto, and he could not be here today. He says, "I grew up in the Santa Rosa Creek Valley and lived many years adjacent to this 1881 Santa Rosa schoolhouse. Unfortunately, I never attended this school due to my young age, but I always felt privileged to pass by this important icon of our local history on my many trips down the canyon to Cambria. It is not often we have the opportunity to embrace our local history in such an important moment in time, but you, the current CCSD board, have the ability to make a rare decision many people will remember. Just imagine turning off Highway 1 and winding down Main Street, heading into the tranquil village of Cambria. Envision this spectacular image as you first enter town and pass over Santa Rosa Creek Road. On the left is the old Williams Flat. A beautifully restored one-room schoolhouse rests in a serene, peaceful meadow. This vision would be a showcase for Cambria. Everyone loves history, and this would be a major draw for tourists into our town. It seems like this setting was made for this small structure with its picturesque bell tower. This is Santa Rosa School, and how appropriate to have its final resting location along the highly visible Santa Rosa Creek as you enter our town. There may never be another location available with such a dramatic setting. Please seize this exceptional opportunity to make this happen. I implore you to give careful and thoughtful consideration to locating such an important historical building for all future generations to enjoy. Respectfully, Robert Soto. And then I have copies of more letters that from other people that I'd like to give.
Thank you. If you would give them to Ms. Madrid. Thank you for your comments. Laurel Stewart, followed by Gloria Fiscalini. Welcome.
Yeah, I'm here representing.
Sorry. My apologies.
I'm here as the project manager for the relocation of the schoolhouse. What I'd like to deal with is a request of the president and any other members of the board who'd like to work on it to send a letter to the Fair Political Practices Commission, which asks for their take on the Government Code Section 1090 that was referenced in Tim Carmel's opinion given to the Pros Commission at their request as to whether or not this relocation of the schoolhouse could take place on the parcel 045, the location that Debbie was just talking about. His opinion states that when a government code section 1090 conflict exists, unless certain exceptions apply, the public agency itself is prohibited from entering into contracts in which a member of its legislative body has a financial interest. That would be Jim Barringer as a director, but I can't see the financial interest other than in the covenant which covers that property. He's given first right of refusal if the property should be sold by CCSD. That isn't anything that we're proposing. We're proposing a lease, a philanthropic lease. We have presented a packet to the manager, to Monique, and via her to the manager, and we also had packets for each member of the board except Jim Barringer. Jim Barringer agreed with Bruce Gibson that he would write a letter to the FPPC and he would ask if there could be an exception made. Tim Carmel does say that case law provides that it is to be liberally and broadly interpreted. Government Code 1090, which seems to be the stumbling block. I talked to the FPPC yesterday. They don't deal with the public. They deal only with those elected people who are going to be involved in such a situation. And so rather than just having the affected director or the affecting director write, I would like to have you guys get together, however many of you would like to resolve this. I'd like to talk with you prior to that. Thank you.
Thank you, and I will. I've got that note down so that we can have a discussion agendized at some point to have that discussion. Gloria Fiscalini, followed by Kathleen Gerhardt.
Good afternoon. Apologize. I'm just going to paraphrase what I've written. I'm fourth generation in this area, 1873, and my great Aunt Lucy, who stood about this tall, didn't drive, never married, donated this land for the veterans. Later on, donated the rest of the land. Matter of fact, the land that the little schoolhouse lives on right now. Her request was something be done for the children of the community, and was very dismayed when the first thing that was put on the land was the adult rec. I have two more generations that live with me, and we want to see all of our heritage saved if we can. I think this is a rare opportunity we have a place now that people seem to be happy with. I agree with Bob that coming into the community and seeing this little schoolhouse it's going to bring more people in. It'd be nice if it was the first thing. Now, if we're Swiss, we're all related. I'm sure you know that by now. My cousin Larry couldn't be here today, and I'm just going to read one paragraph of his. Please give this careful and thoughtful consideration to relocating such an important historical building in this open space of the intersection. You are helping to save a bit of history for future generations. And then for the schoolhouse has been a historical building for decades. Our native Santa Rosa Creek families, whom were dairymen in those days, grade B, sent their kids to this school. Therefore, I feel the schoolhouse is part of our community's history and culture and should be preserved for future generations to appreciate. So I still have time. This what we were, the Swiss, when they came, we were grade B. We took our milk to Harmony. That little town of Harmony, we were P.O. Box 55, 93435. Anything that we can save. When I go to San Luis now, it's just, okay. Too many changes. Anything that we can save to make this community beautiful, I would vote for. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Kathleen Gerhardt, followed by Donald Archer.
Hello. I have a letter from Olympio Fiscalini. He's my brother.
Could you talk right into the mic so we can hear you?
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a letter from Olympio Fiscalini. I have lived all my life on Santa Rosa Creek Road, and I attended the Santa Rosa School through the 3rd grade when it closed in '52. I understand the schoolhouse must be moved, and I would like to see it moved to the former dog park. This would be a beautiful location for the school. As everyone enters the town of Cambria, the schoolhouse has always been important to my family, as my father and my siblings all attended there. And then here's one from Randy Harris. This note is addressing the proposed relocation of the Santa Rosa Schoolhouse, which was used from the late 1800s to the mid-1900s. One-room schools were an important part of our educational system in the North Coast area of San Luis Obispo County. We had many in the San Simeon Cambria area. Only Santa Rosa is available as a museum of our past. I support the thought of relocating the school to the setting at the junction of Main Street and Santa Rosa Creeks Road. This site would place it on the land much like the original. It could then be restored to the period of actual usage. A one-room schoolhouse museum at this location would give visitors to Cambria a view into Cambria's pioneer beginning. And I was Diane Bianchi and I, Kathleen Fiscalini, were the last graduating with the 8th grade before it closed. And thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Donald Archer.
Hello.
Welcome. Let me reset your clock.
Okay.
There you go.
Thanks. First, I want to commend the statement that was read in the beginning that General Manager Gruber suggested. Thought it was a good quote. And some people have suggested that I read the letter to the editor that I wrote that got into the paper today. For one, it was called proposed CSD rate hikes. That was the editor's choice, not mine. And so I don't want to be in a confrontational position going along with the spirit of that quote. I wouldn't have chosen the headline. I think I would have used something like scrutinize the proposed CSD rate hikes, or it's deja vu all over again. I mean, that could have been good. I want something that's more positive, proactive, and less negative reaction along with that comment. So I wrote, we the community need to scrutinize the proposed CCSD rate hikes. I fear that the CCSD administration and some members of the board are more intent on getting these rate hikes passed than on getting them right. Granted, we are impacted by years of CCSD inaction, which can, in large part, be attributed to community apathy, misinformation, and parsimony. The infrastructure in particular needs upgrades and repairs, and that costs money. Nonetheless, I am concerned that the budget and figures which the proposed hikes are based on reflect bias, or misleading and inaccurate. It's troubling to me that the company that was hired to draw up the proposed rate hikes, Bartle Wells Associates, seems dependent on figures that the CCSD itself supplied, since CCSD is the entity that hired them and to whom they are beholden. Before we agree to pay any rate hikes, let's make sure that the hikes don't reflect a bloated budget, imprudent and unaudited. If we don't want the same old, or deja vu all over again, let's press the pause button, scrutinize the CCSD, reset priorities, and get involved and get it right. And then I was just going through some of the items I think that are on the consent agenda today or whatever. I looked at bottled water was one. I don't know exactly what that means. The other was a refrigerator in the general manager's office. I feel like some of those personal expenses there, I don't want to be petty, but I think that for the philosophy should be reflected in it. And bottled water, I don't know what kind, if it's individual or big. There are other ways that you can get water using your own water supply, which that's what you do. You create water. So it seems to me that it would be best from a public relations standpoint to go that way. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. Joy Fitzhugh.
Joy had planned to be here today, so to read her letters, but so if it's okay, I'll just read a portion of them.
How about I'll give you an extra minute, but I don't want to be unfair to the other folks that are here too. Okay.
So Joy Fitzhugh has an important history with the Santa Rosa Schoolhouse. She said this schoolhouse has a fabulous history, a history that includes the fact that my grandmother, Caroline Hale Fitzhugh, and my great-aunt Pearl Hale were among the first students to attend the school in the early 1880s. We are losing too much of our Central Coast history. Don't let this be a part of that loss. The perfect location for the schoolhouse is the property you own at the intersection of Main Street and Santa Rosa Creek Road. It would be a great historic entrance to the town. If possible, a long-term lease of the property with the Cambria Historical Society could make this a win for our history and the town of Cambria. And this was directed to the Cambria Community Service District Board. And Walter Fitzhugh also stated in his letter, the school is significant to my family as my grandmother Caroline Hale Fitzhugh and great-aunt Pearl Hale were among the first students in the school in 1881. Anyway,
thank you. Can we also make sure that we get copies of those to the Board of Directors so that we can see all those letters? Wonderful. Thank you. I don't have any other requests to speak on public comment, so we will move forward to the consent agenda. Are there any items that people would like to pull? Director Wharton?
Could I ask a question of Ms. Soto regarding
progress?
Yes.
Ms. Soto?
How's it going with the FPPC? Are you making headway? Is there a path that you see? Where do we stand with that?
Yes, I just talked to Guy this morning, Guy Behringer, and he said he's been in contact with them, but they hasn't heard anything yet. And then Laurel found out that maybe there's a problem with what they requested, or it's not exactly what we needed. So he said as soon as he gets back, he's out of town, he was going to look into what is needed and then hopefully ask the right questions to the FPCC.
Thank you.
Director Farmer.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to pull a couple of items, 4A, which is the expenditure report, and also 4I, which is a comment on balanced public relations and our contract with them. And also I was going to also suggest that we pull 4H, which is regarding our hope for a partnership with PG&E. But I believe I see Mr. Pantera in the audience, and so therefore perhaps this item is going to be addressed separately. Is that possible? Is that what's happening?
We have it on the consent. If you would like to pull it from consent, then we can do that. I would suggest that maybe we consider those items later in the meeting so that we can make sure we get to the general manager's report this time, because we keep running out of time. But I'm looking for some consensus from my fellow directors here.
What you would like to do is take the items pulled from the consent agenda and move them to the end?
Pull them for separate consideration and discussion.
I think
at
we
the
have
end.
some people that are going to comment on 4A especially.
Okay.
So you might want to do 4A, and then the other ones we could leave till later. Although
I'm genuinely open either way. I just am trying to get some consensus.
Might I suggest on Director Farmer's request, since there's two PG representatives here, if he has some questions to ask them as opposed to moving it to the end, because we could have them sitting here 4 or 5 hours, and I think
trying to be sensitive to the general manager, getting to the general manager's report, because I'm concerned about making sure the public is aware of the well levels and various other. That's kind of was my concern. But if I'm hearing from the rest of the directors that right now is fine, it's fine with me.
Yeah, let's move ahead.
Okay.
See how it goes.
Okay.
Well, if I could just make one comment, since Mr. Patera and his aide are here, I wouldn't want them to have to hang around till the end of the meeting. That's just my. They're nice enough to be here to give us some sort of explanation as to what the opportunities are that might be available for the district and working with PG&E. So I'd like to give him an opportunity to further elaborate on what it is that would be available for us.
Okay, so I've got A, H, and I pulled for separate consideration, but I would entertain a motion for the remaining items, which would be B, C, D. Let me make sure I don't have any comment on those items. No, just ones that are pulled. So B, C, D, E, F, and G. I would entertain a motion on passing those items.
I'll second.
So it's been moved apparently by me and seconded by Director Wharton. And can we have a roll call, please? This is on items B through G of the consent agenda.
President Rice?
Aye.
Director Wharton?
Aye.
Director Farmer?
Aye.
Director Pearson?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0. Thank you very much. And we will take these items in order, in alpha order. And General Manager Gruber, do you want to make any report on the expenditure report, or shall I just take public comment and then director discussion?
There are a few items in here that I would like to clarify on. First of all, you have a green sheet for one reason in particular, and we purchased a vehicle for the Sustainable Water Facility Chief Plant Operator. And we were able to get that vehicle out of Salinas for a very good price, about $23,000 or so. We took that from the Sustainable Water Facility Fund, and now Mr. Green has a vehicle to be able to drive to that facility. When we processed the check was not signed. And so the bank contacted me and said the check was not signed, and so we issued another check. And you'll see that two expenditures show up for that, where it really should be a debit and a credit. So if you were in the public looking at this, you would say, wow, we're in the process of trying to pass rates, and the CCSD is buying 2 trucks, and that's just not the case. So that was a clerical error on our part, and we went ahead and made the necessary adjustments. There's 2 other particular issues that I'd like to bring, and it seems that the PG&E bills and the laboratory bills for abalone seem to be excessive. What we need to do is improve on our abilities to pay our bills in a timely manner. We realize that there has been some instances where these numbers reflect a couple-month period of time versus just a 1-month period of time. And I'd finance managers here to maybe elaborate a little more on the specifics of those. So as the board does look at these expenditures and say, well, wow, usually, Abalone Farms or the BK Labs is this, and now it's this, or wow, PG&E is this, and now it's this. What's going on here, Jerry? And it was a payment for a larger period of time than usual. Just one other thing relating to expenditures, but not necessarily this report, and that's the preliminary budget that the board adopted. There was a renaming, if you will, of some of the positions within the administrative department. I just want to emphasize to the board and the public that we're not adding any positions to the CCSD. We're just using the gifts and the talents of the people that are available in the administrative office, reshifting some priorities and having some folks do some different things that they may have not done before. And so as part of this budget process, which was preliminarily approved by the board, it doesn't equate to any new positions for the CCSD, nor does it include any increases in salary for staff members. And I could have done a better job as general manager. There was an announcement, an advertisement that flew in the finance department, and it really kind of took a lot of people by surprise, and it really was just a reclassification of the existing jobs within the finance department. So I'll be a little bit more aware of those type things, and it was really a very sensitive issue, so I apologize for that. Now, I know Director Farmer does a fantastic job, and he's diligent on looking at the expenditure report, so he'll probably have some questions that I inadvertently missed. So.
And we have some public comment on that item. We'll go first with Christine Heinrich, followed by Don Howell.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Christine Heinrichs of Cambria. Thank you, Director Farmer, for removing that expenditure report from the consent agenda. That was what I was originally coming up here to ask you to do. There were a number of items on there that really raised questions in my mind, and I think it's very much worthwhile to go over that report and take a closer look at them. Charging over $14,000 on credit cards is excessive for a district Cambria's size. I hope you'll review the items that have been charged, and please consider eliminating the general manager's authority to purchase items that are less than $25,000. The spending appears to be excessive. Thank you for the explanation about the $45,000 on Ford trucks. That's only $22,000 something. That's still another truck for the district. I wonder if this is really something that we needed. The electrical costs need to be analyzed. I'm glad that PG&E is here today. We can talk about this. Why are the bills so high? How much electricity is the district using? What is Cambria's carbon footprint? I saw today that Burlington, Vermont, a city of 45,000, has gone entirely to renewable energy. Perhaps this is a direction that Cambria could consider going in. I am looking forward to hearing more about this design-build energy project for the wastewater treatment plant and the Sustainable Solutions Turnkey Program. That sounds like a bunch of buzzwords strung together. I'm looking forward to hearing that report. Please consider discussing and establishing goals and objectives for each department before committing to a project. How does this project fit into Cambria's goals? Where is Cambria headed? Cambria had the opportunity to hear a presentation and ask questions of Dean Flores of Balanced Public Relations a while back. Thank you again, Director Farmer, for removing that from the consent agenda. I think that in view of the ephemeral nature of his accomplishments, it's time to terminate this contract rather than renew it. That $7,000 a month would be better spent on hiring a forest manager than on meetings in Sacramento. We would be able to see our forest getting healthier and more resilient. Cambria's water pipes and other infrastructure need to be upgraded. Pipes do not last forever, and we are seeing continuous leaks. Elizabeth Bettenhausen performs excellent analysis of district water use at no charge to the public. I am grateful to her for the time she spends and the expertise she brings to Cambria. The board is contemplating raising water and sewer rates because they do not have enough money to pay for needed improvements. However, this expenditure report gives no indication of any commitment on the part of the board and staff to more austere money management. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Don Howell is my last request to speak on this item.
Madam President, do you want me to wait till the end to comment on these?
If you
Yes,
would,
ma'am.
please.
Oh, thank you, Don Howell. Just some comments regarding the expenditure report. I am a little bit puzzled about the size of the credit card charge, especially since I think it grew from 7,000 to 14 over a 1 month period. I suspect the general manager may have too much spending authority. That's enough said on that one. I would like to know, or if not now, I think the public would be interested in knowing, excuse me, what the hourly charge for legal counsel is. I'm noticing a $11,000 a month retainer at $300 an hour. That amounts to 37 hours. So I think we do need to know, because on the face of it, it seems excessive, but I know that good lawyers are very expensive, and I'm sure, but I think we do need to know this, because that's a very, very significant expense. Similarly, in that same line, we had general legal on that same month for $1,300, which I presume was not covered by the retainer. And in addition, there's litigation going on for another $1,000. That one, I presume we could look up in the court records and find out what that litigation was about. So a little clarification would be useful there. As to the $34,000 testing for the supposedly, hopefully sustainable water supply, even half of that is pretty excessive for a month's time. So if that's 2 months, that still begs the question: that is a lot of money to be paying per month for a facility that's not doing anything. And apropos of that, as a final statement, in reviewing the expenditure summary, one notices that in round numbers that, wastewater and water expenditures were $115,000. We also $104,000 was spent on the hope to turn the emergency water supply into a sustainable water facility, which it still is not. I find that very excessive and have serious problems with that kind of relation between these expenditures. And in terms of the rate increase going forward, that's something that I think the committee probably needs to address a little more thoroughly. And the last thing, again, not wishing to be petty, but wanting to know board policies. Most of us in the working world generally commute in our own vehicles. So we need to know what the board policy is regarding these vehicles which are being purchased for the use of various people. I mean, it may be quite legitimate, but we, the public, need to know that, because there's a lot of money going out for that. And it's stuff that normal working folks don't have the pleasure of having a supplied car. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Gruber or Mr. Carmel, do you want to start with the legal costs really quick, and then we'll go to Mr. Gruber for the others?
Certainly, Madam President.
Thank you.
I guess I don't have to. Our hourly rate is $185 an hour for general administration work and $200 an hour for litigation. And that's because a public entity that gives you a fairly steady stream of income gets a significant discount from our normal rates. And with regard to the litigation, that's the Land Watch litigation this month that's still chugging down the tracks, although I think it ended, actually we got a notice from the court today that we had won this last round, which was the cost bill that they had appealed, so that should be over.
Thank you very much for that clarification. I do want to point out we do have a closed session today where we have the district council's evaluation on closed session item. So if you're still here near that time, you can make comments on it at that point if you'd like to. But I hear that we'll bring that forward.
Madam President, with continuing with regards to legal costs, there was a reference made by Mr. Howell regarding the $300 an hour, and that's for Liebert, Cassidy, and Whitmore services, not Carmela and Nakasha, and they're representing our labor negotiations right now. The caveat that I would have associated with the legal cost for that is that having a good chief negotiator on our team will result in significant savings in the long run for the district as it relates to employee cost and associated benefits. So I think it's money well spent. The credit card comment by Ms. Christine Heinrichs, and I want to thank Ms. Heinrichs and also Mr. Howell for their comments. I think they're very good comments. The credit card is over a several month period of time, and as I indicated earlier, we need to do a better job in paying the bills monthly. One of the things that is causing some problems, but we went ahead and did it, is we've taken the credit cards away from the fire chiefs. We only have one fire chief. The fire captains, if you recall, and they were the supervisors of those shifts. It was against the fire chief's recommendation, and so what you're seeing now is all the associated costs relating to training and things like that being put on the chief's card. So what I did is I asked the fire chief to provide me with a detailed summary of why it is important for the captains to have credit cards. Remember, the captains are responsible for each one of their shifts. And I'll be meeting with Director Pearson and Director Berenger later on next week to discuss future agenda items for the Finance Committee. And I've told the chief that I would be discussing that issue with them because it is causing some operational challenges within their department. And it's also causing you to see a lot of money being spent on the chief's card, where if the fire captains had their individual credit cards like we've done for many years, maybe it wouldn't. Maybe it would give him a little bit of break on his credit card. Ms. Heinrichs brought up a good point of the $25,000. It's consistent with our purchasing policy. Usually, for a general manager, city manager, or a county manager, usually that amounts more. But we have adjusted it since I've been here, and really the purpose of the $25,000 is not for me to be able just to go out and spend $25,000 that I don't have or is not budgeted. It's really a case an emergency comes up. So if we have a board meeting on the 28th, let's say, and a pump in a lift station goes out and it's $24,000, and it's not approved in the budget, or even if it is approved in the budget, it gives me the authority to handle some emergencies, and it's a flexibility that I really need. It's not something that's abused, but it's something that a person as a general manager, CEO, needs to have that flexibility. I don't want to have to, if something arises where I need to get it taken care of, I need to get it taken care of without having to wait till the next board meeting. I could not agree with Ms. Hendricks' statement regarding the electrical cost to the district. Again, the things you're seeing on the expenditure reports over several months. But we've partnered with Energy Watch out of San Luis Obispo County. They did a detailed audit of our entire service area, everything that from the admin building to all the wells, their facilities, lift stations, and the wastewater treatment plant. And what I was able to do is negotiate a lower tier with them on our wastewater treatment plant. So I'd saved us some money, but not a whole lot. For us to move forward with partnering with Energy Watch and PG&E, we really need to address the issue of the motor control center. Energy Watch of San Luis Obispo County wants to help, wants to come in here, wants to offer their services, but until we get the motor control center replaced, which is PG&E will be talking about, we can't really partner with them. Again, Mr. Howell mentioned the credit cards. That's a multiple months. We've covered the district council. The SWF, the testing on that is again for several months. Very expensive, I agree. But again, we've been able to negotiate with the Regional Water Quality Control Board that, and I'm just waiting for something in writing, that we can stop all groundwater testing, which is really the expensive testing, and we can start it back up 1 month prior to operations and 3 months after we cease operations. So, in other words, there'll be a long period of time when we're not running the facility that we don't have to do that sampling. And the last comment with Mr. Howell is regarding company vehicles. From a customer service standpoint, if there's an individual on call, that individual needs to be able to respond as quickly as possible. If they're called and they don't live in town, which most of them don't, for them to take their own personal vehicle and then to go get the company truck and then to respond to whatever the emergency is, whether a leak, is not a good use of their time. Also, there's liability issues associated with a person on standby or on call driving their own personal vehicle back and forth. If they were to be involved in an accident, the district could be held liable. So several years back, probably 4 years or so ago, I made an operational decision. It really falls within the responsibility and authority of the general manager, is to allow our standby folks and our supervisors in water, wastewater, and the sustainable facility to drive vehicles home. And it really evolved from a faster response time and the ability to improve our customer service, and it's worked really well. I haven't received any calls, and because they know that it is a privilege, it is not a right. We made that perfectly clear to the extent where they signed a piece of paper saying this is a company vehicle, you're to go to and from work, and that's it. And we haven't had any problems. But on the flip side, I can appreciate Mr. Howell's comments regarding, quote, the use of vehicles and taxpayers' dollars paying for those. It is a sensitive issue. But I can also assure Mr. Howell that our supervisors that are using those vehicles do so in a responsible manner, and that they're doing it to improve customer service. So hope I covered everything. But
I have a couple of follow-up questions relating to that. I had some of the same concerns looking at this expenditure report. AGP, can you pull up the slides that when you get a sec? The first thing I'd like to comment on is that in our purchasing policy, it explicitly states that the use of a CCSD credit card is for CCSD travel. So not for purchasing things because you need a credit card to buy it. You need to be going through a purchase order process according to the policy. And we need to either have the written policy in line with what we're actually doing day to day, or the other way around. But right now they don't gel, and that's not good at all. We need to be very clear, and if we need to change the credit card use policy so that we can use it for things other than travel, because today there's a lot more things you can buy online. It's not like when this policy was made where, probably Amazon was a trickle like Santa Rosa Creek, okay? So it's not like I'm not saying that we need to be punishing anybody, but we do need to get our written policy in line with what we're doing on the ground, and whether it's changing what's happening on the ground or the policy, that's for the board to decide. I also would argue that the board should be setting the policy regarding trucks when they get purchased, when they get taken home, because that does cause wear and tear. There's also tax implications for somebody who's using a vehicle, and if they're filling up the vehicle at our gas tank, the JB Doer that we pay on a monthly basis, then that becomes a benefit then for the employee. And a question relating to that's policy is I know we've got on today's consent agenda, we have Chief Hollingsworth's contract, but we didn't see the contract for the CPO, and I'm just going to make the assumption that it did go through district council for appropriateness and legality, but whether or not we purchase a truck in order to secure a new employee or not seems like something that shouldn't really be, even if it's under 25 grand, because it wasn't in the budget, and we are underwater, no pun intended, when it comes to the budget of the SWF. We don't have an extra 25,000 to be giving away, even if it's for a truck. And so there needs to be a very strong justification for doing that, especially right now when we're trying to pass rate increases. It's just not very, it's not, and I don't mean to be mean, but it's just not a very smart move looking at the bigger picture to me. And I was very surprised when I saw it. I was glad to hear the explanation that it wasn't that we bought 2 trucks, or that it was we paid $45,000 for a truck and split it into 2 payments, so it was under $25,000. I mean, I'm very glad that it wasn't that situation. That would have been more than troubling. So this is I took the expenditure report. That's this month's expenditure report without personnel. Personnel costs are not included in this. The top yellow one is the SWF, the amount that we spent on SWF. The middle one is, I think, the water department, and the bottom one is wastewater. That's the biggest blue part of the pie is split out into those 3. That's the enterprise fund. Can you go to the next slide, please? This is last month. If you notice, the SWF, significantly smaller expenditures, probably because we didn't pay the Abalone Coast testing costs. So if you average it over the 2 different months, you also see greater expenditures in water and wastewater that month. And so it really varies by month. If you go past the next slide to the last one. Yeah, that one. So this is side by side, so you can kind of see that's April and May. Because there were some concerns that I had, but that's what we're looking at. And if you combine those 2, which I didn't have time to do because I had to do a lot of converting, so I didn't have to type all the expenditures in. It's not like we had a huge month and a little month. You put them together and it kind of smooths over. And reality is we do need to be paying our bills. I'm sorry to hear that we're not being on top of those payments. Thank you very much. I'm good on the last thing is, and this is something that we do on a fairly regular basis. I see there's San Luis Personnel Services. It says temp for weekend. I'm looking at page 27 of the expenditure report.
I think that means week ending.
Is that for the week ending and not for the weekend? Okay, that's confusing to those of us who aren't HR experts. Thank you for that clarification. That's
We'll work on clarifying that.
Oh, it's fine. Now that I know what it is, okay. That's fine. It was just a little.
What page, Madam?
What are we doing with weekend people? It's about the weekend.
Oh, okay.
Thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So thank you for that. Thank you for that clarification. Again, it's just part of the problem is we need to get a better software tool for creating these reports so that it is easier to be clear about some of these things. And I'm glad we're on the road on that front. The last thing that I have, I cannot find right now. So, Director Farmer?
Can I comment just with regards to the purchasing policy, Madam President, just the primary use of the CCSD credit card is for CCSD travel. All purchases using a credit card are subject to the same procedures as outlined previously in this policy. So you're right. The primary use of the credit card is for travel. So maybe some additional clarification for that. I'm hoping that the board will allow me to continue to make the decision of allowing the operators, especially the on-call and the chief plant operators, to continue to take vehicles back and forth home. The reason being is if you think of every other public, whether it's the cable company, PG&E, the gas company, county staff, city staff that are in critical roles, we would probably be the only one that wouldn't allow for that. The board has voiced concern about being able to hire, keep, retain good staff. One of the reasons is that we are able to provide them vehicles to go back and forth. So whatever policy is made, I just want you to be sensitive of that. And so look at us as a public utility company. We're no different than the power company, the electric company, the cable company. All those people allow their folks to drive vehicles home, and we should continue to allow them to do the same. It would be a very difficult, on two fronts, if from an operational perspective you were to take that authority away from me, but more importantly, if I would have to go to my employees and say, I know you've been driving the trucks home for 4 years and we've improved customer service, but now we're taking it away from you. So the CPO position was not a contract position. It's an SCIU position, so we didn't need a contract for that. And the purchase of the truck, you're right. Did we need it? Absolutely. We have to have our CPO for the SWS has to have a vehicle. We did not have a vehicle available, but I could have done a better job in communicating that to the board, and for that I apologize. So.
And we had a very long discussion last May over the truck that we purchased last year. You got 3 bids, and again, that one was over $25,000, and so it had to come to us. But we had a fairly extensive discussion that included fairly good consensus of the board, because I watched it again, because except for my droning on and not getting to the point soon enough like I am today, there was some clear thought among the board members at that time that whether we purchase vehicles, we need to have a good sense of even how many vehicles do we have and what's the mileage on them, so that we can plan for these things instead of just we need to go, well, I could use a new car. Can I have a new car? I don't think that that's a good, smart decision for me, and I'm board president. I mean, I want our employee, this is not about the employees having the equipment they need. They need to have the equipment they need. This is about the board having the information we need so that we can make sure the employees have the equipment they need and we have the money to provide it, because this is going to put us into the red. And I have to say, honestly, I'm just disappointed after having the discussion that we had last year that this wasn't brought back to the board, even though it's under 20. And the other thing is, it's not even a 4-wheel drive. He's working out where it's muddy. Is it going to be enough to take care of what he needs to take care of out there? Again, I don't want to second guess your decisions, but there was some clear direction from the board that you shouldn't be just going and purchasing trucks without having some kind of policy in place for how we're going to maintain them. Thank you. Director Farmer.
Thank you. I want to how can I say it, agree with basically everything, every concern and every item that our board president just brought to our attention. So I'd like to ask a couple of questions, or actually more than a couple of questions with regard to the expenditure report. And I'll try to condense this, although as folks know, sometimes I just go on for a while, especially with regard to our water facility up on the hill. It's just, I don't know whether, and maybe I misunderstood, but when we were talking about the lab testing, which comes to about $34,500 for the month of May for the facility, and maybe I misunderstood, but I believe our general manager said, well, this is because we didn't pay the previous bill on time. But once again, I just find it hard to believe that a plant that is about, water and mixing, water and wastewater, needs boron, asbestos, radium, uranium percolate testing, and it's just more radium testing and more bromate chloride testing. There's got to be a better way to move forward in the 21st century in, how could we say it, taking one of the most precious resources that humanity has on this planet, such as air and water, and not having to use these chemicals. That's just my personal take on it. Also,
real quick, these things are outside my control. We're not using these chemicals. We're getting these chemicals analyzed. So we're not. And I
understand. I didn't say that we're using them. All I'm saying, just the fact that they're here, and we're having to spend.
They're not here. They're all NDs. They're non-detect. So I want to clarify that too.
Okay. Well, yeah. I don't think. Let's put it this way. There's a misunderstanding with what I'm trying to convey, and what's coming out of my mouth isn't being received by your ears in the way I mean it. So we'll just move on. Okay. So just a couple of more items, maybe, just with regard to the water facility. So I see consulting services, about $13,000 with regard to this past month. More support system stuff and task order stuff with CDM Smith, which is about $7,500. Also, I just wanted to ask a question. So I notice on page 10, with regard to, and let me see if I can get to that real quick so I don't hold us up. Mowing the percolation pond and around pump station B, we paid Bushwhacker $3,500 to do that. So I obviously am in the wrong business. I'm just curious, why did it cost that much money to do mowing around the percolation pond and pump station?
Have you seen our percolation ponds and our well fields are pretty expansive. One of the questions that was asked by another director, Director Pearson, is why can't facilities and resources do that? And I thought it was a good question. And facilities and resources, their primary responsibility is taking care of the ranch. But to have I guess it comes down to this: we have limited staffing resources and we have limited financial resources too. So since it was the wastewater treatment plant, percolation ponds, it's more important for the staff to be focusing on the treatment plant, wastewater treatment plant, and the lift stations. And then the same thing with the water crew. Since we have a limited amount of staff, the supervisors, I leave it up to their discretion to decide how that staff should be used. Now, if you had a staff member that should be checking lift stations versus mowing, or a staff member who should be exercising valves or maintaining the water wells, so it just really comes down to the availability of our staff and where those priorities are. I leave those decisions, if it's within their budget, I leave those decisions up to Jason in the water department and then John in the wastewater department. So to look at it, go, that's a lot of money, but we have to maintain those. We have to maintain the well field. We have to keep it mowed. And the percolation ponds adjacent to the sustainable water facility, those have to be maintained too in accordance with our permits. So those are very good questions, Director Farmer.
Let me just ask a few other questions about items.
Can I just follow up on the Bushwhacker question?
Sure.
It was charged to the SWF and not the wastewater department to mow the percolation ponds, and what you had just said was that that's the wastewater department? So maybe it needs to be accounted for not as the SWF?
It's the wastewater. It should be the wastewater department. If it shows SWF here, then that's incorrect. So Rudy will make a note of that.
Thank you very much.
That's an accounting error, but
that's fine.
Yeah,
I just wanted to.
The primary
we'll
purpose.
Get it corrected. Thank you.
You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Director Farmer.
Thank you. So a couple of just some more items, and some of them are small, but they just jumped out at me. And I see that Wastewater Supervisor Alchin is here, so he might be able to answer this question better than the general manager. I'm noticing that under AT&T that there were 23 alarms at various lift stations from March through May. They're only minor, it's like $20 each or so. I'm just curious to what that is, and do they often occur? Is that something that's a regular expense? Perhaps I've overlooked it in the past if it is. I'm just wondering why that would have happened.
So we have phone lines still at our lift stations as opposed to a telemetry system. One thing I will note, and so when it dials out, that's a charge. One thing I will note on this, Director Farmer, that is prior to John coming on, those lift stations were almost always in some kind of a alarm mode. So ultimately, we would like to do, and John, please correct me if I'm wrong, is to migrate those stations in their entirety to a telemetry system where we could eliminate those charges. So that's what those are associated with. Sometimes it could be a power failure or a high wet level alarm or something like that, but they're down significantly. But you're right, every time we get one of those, there is a charge associated with that.
Okay, so I would like to also comment on, I see on page 13 that we paid unemployment benefits to Mr. Block, Jay Block, and I'm just curious because I thought Jay resigned. So why are we paying him unemployment benefits if he resigned?
Monique, you want to handle that one, or? I know the answer. I just want to be careful what I say.
Oh, that's a novel concept.
Yeah. Well, we've.
Oh, sorry, it's just slipped out. So my apologies.
I just want to make sure I don't say anything inappropriate regarding HR matters. That's what I meant. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Jerry. I couldn't.
That's okay. That was a good one. That was a good one, Director Farmer.
We did try to fight the unemployment, but when somebody resigns, they're eligible for unemployment if they retire.
Oh, okay. All right, so page 16, and this is like, I don't know, it just kind of jumped out at me. It's a minor one in the scheme of things. Under Gerber's Auto Service, a charge of $49.45, could not do rotation on the tires because they needed replacing. Knowing Gerber Automotive, I guess. Anyway, that just kind of, we couldn't do the tire rotation, but we're charging you $49 to let you know that. That's how it appears that it's saying it there. Anyway,
we probably could have done a better job explaining it than.
It's not a problem. It's just my weird sense of humor needing to bring that one up. And then two more items.
I think they changed the oil. I just got a nod that they changed the oil on the vehicle too. So, which I get my oil changed for $17 at Walmart. So maybe we.
Actually, the oil change is also noticed as $53.
Okay.
Okay. Two more items.
Yes, sir.
So I see on page 20 where we paid Nancy McCarney, who, by the way, is a professional and personal friend of mine. So we paid her another additional $1,300 for web page support. And I seem to recall, it was a few months ago that we paid her, it was either $3,400 or $4,500, sorry, I don't recall the exact amount, for designing our new web page. So now we've paid her an additional amount of money, but we had staff just redesigned that web page. So we paid somebody within the past 6 months roughly $4,500 or more to redesign our web page, and now it's been redesigned by staff. And there were some people in the community, including yours truly, who thought that the web page prior to the redesign that Ms. McCartney did, no reflection on Nancy, was actually more easy to navigate and more user-friendly. So I'm just curious as to why did staff have to redo a recently redesigned web page that we paid money for?
So we have a contract with Ms. McCartney, and we're bringing that contract to an end. Prior to Nancy, there was several requests from the board and the community to make improvements to the website. We thought that the work that she did brought the website to another level. However, we have launched a more, I think, user-friendly website, a better website now. When you say staff has not done it. Staff has worked with I think it was $1,500, right, Monique? And yeah, and if you would comment on that. So we worked with Nancy for a while. We improved the website. Really, the contract that she had was not that much money. We made the improvements, but then we decided to go another direction with a firm that designs a lot of websites for special districts and cities and counties, it's been kind of a genesis. It's been kind of a process. We hope to improve on it even more. To include a link that would allow public records requests and things like that, so staff's not spending a lot of time on that. So a very good question. It's real money. You're absolutely right. But we're not using Nancy anymore, and she completely understands, and we're heading in a different direction. So
okay, well, let me just comment that in the email that I received that had the notice of the new website, it didn't reference Nancy, and it didn't reference any other agency that was helping you. It just said staff. That's why I said staff.
Right, and we should have clarified that. Of course, when you're transitioning from one website host to another, it always involves staff to a certain extent to make sure that transition works out smoothly. So, good question, Director Farmer.
Okay. I was going to ask about something that you mentioned earlier about the Motor Control Center, but since that doesn't have anything to do with the expenditure report, that's it for now. Sorry to take up so much of our valuable time.
Not at all. Thank you.
All right.
I just
Director
want
Wharton.
clarification on page 27, the almost $65,000 charge for the workers' comp. That was just the annual or quarterly premium payment, I'm assuming? And not an actual charge or the claim against, okay.
Ms. Madrid, would you like to?
Yeah, that's the annual reconciliation for the fiscal year. Yeah, we get the bill from our workers' comp company, and then we pay it based on hours worked.
And it was annual?
Yes.
Okay. It's a pretty good deal compared to what I pay as a business owner.
Well, it's because we're part of a consortium, and so we're pooled with everybody else. If we were individually like a sole proprietor or a business, it would be
or brewing beer.
Yeah, it would be outrageous. It also has to do with yeah, maybe you should.
All right. Thank you. Next item is H. Is the next item pulled, and I have one request to speak on that item. Do you want to make a report, Mr. Gruber? This is on the PG&E. Do we want to hear? Before we begin on this item, one of the things that the standing committees gives us the advantage of having detailed presentations and having those committees look at some of the things like this particular item, which is why we have it on consent, because it's my belief, because in agenda prep, the chair of the infrastructure committee said that the infrastructure committee thought it was a good idea that we proceed, and at this point, we are not committing, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Gruber, but we're not committing any funds yet. This is an assessment of our current situation so that they can give us a proposal that we would then have to enter into some agreement that would require the district to commit to certain amounts of money or staff time or something?
That is correct. It's a three-step process. There's the assessment, the audit, and then you move forward with the design build.
So this is kind of a preliminary step before we get to a point where we'll have to make a decision about committing.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, which is one of the reasons why we had it on consent, because the standing committees should allow for us to have the full board to get recommendations, and correct me if I'm wrong, since you're on the infrastructure committee. The infrastructure committee thinks this is a good idea and we should have the assessment, and then PG&E can make a more well-informed presentation about what they can do for us, what the benefits and what the costs might be. Am I understanding that correctly?
I believe you are, yes.
So that was the reasoning that the vice president and I had in putting this on consent, and it's not to hide the ball. It's that this is the preliminary step to getting to where we will have a better idea, and PG&E can come and make and correct any of this or add to it. But my thinking was, we had a good hour-long presentation at the infrastructure committee meeting. The infrastructure committee meeting thinks we should have the assessment. I'm inclined to have the board majority concur with that assessment of the situation, and then instead of having kind of a general presentation about what this program is, we would have a more specific, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the general idea? Could you come to the, thank you, and just state your name for the record.
Yeah,
thank you.
Hi, Madam President and members of the board.
Thank you.
My name is Brent Patera. I'm with Pacific Gas and Electric Company, and I essentially do turnkey energy projects for customers, primarily public customers. So I would say everything that's been said so far, I don't have any problem with and would support everybody's position. It's my understanding as well. So I guess it's formally pulled off consent, so if somebody wants to ask me any additional questions, I'm more than happy to.
Director Pearson.
Yeah, I don't have a question, but one of the public had a question on what the project is. We won't know what the project is until they do this no-cost audit, and then from there they describe what the project is based upon what makes sense to save us money. So basically the premise for these, and I used to do this in my former life, so I know a lot about this, is that they're going to try to bring us a project or set of projects that will be paid for by the energy savings. Am I correct, sir?
Yeah, I would say significantly paid for by the energy savings, right? As we talked briefly before the meeting, the goal is to be very transparent about it, right? So we're going to find out what the MCC is going to cost, right? We're going to find out what savings opportunities are going to be starting at the plant, and then we'll inform staff and also the board or the infrastructure committee as appropriate as we sort of unfold the reality, right? So I think the way I would state where we're at today is that we've had very productive meetings with staff. We then, several weeks ago, came through the infrastructure committee, and we're just looking for kind of green lights. And I believe that this is, and we've done this many times in other public agencies, this is just opening on the floor so everybody agrees what we're doing, what the process looks like, so no one's surprised, right? So I would agree with everything everybody said.
Okay.
Yeah, so sorry.
Thank you.
I'm a professional talker primarily, so I apologize.
That's okay, so are we.
I see kindred spirit. You said something about that earlier.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll be quiet now.
No. Thank you. I appreciate your clarifications, because I know the public, and just in the expenditure report, the public has made comments on how much money we're spending on energy. So
our hope is to address that primary cost. Yeah.
Right. So we're looking for that. I have one request to speak from the public. Don Howell. Thank you very much. Nope. Thank you. Thank you, Don.
Thank you. Actually, the only reason I wanted to speak to it was to ask that it be pulled from the consent agenda, not because I have any problem with it. I attended the presentation and I said go for it, but many of the public and the storm of emails that I'm getting in my mailbox indicates that many people don't fully understand what is before the board right now, and I just wanted to be sure that those watching could see some of the value to this. And right now, no, we're not talking about spending money. Yeah, finally, something we're not spending money. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments, and I think that we have not approved the expenditure report yet. We'll take all three items together in approving them, so we'll go to I next, unless there's other questions. Did you have another question on this item?
I just wanted to comment on what
Director
Mr. Howell said in the queries that he's getting in the voluminous number of emails that he's gotten. Whatever monies this district winds up having to spend on the improvements that take place, in conjunction with PG&E, in the long run, is going to save money for the district, not just in electrical costs, but in wear and tear on all of the machinery that is at the wastewater facility, and that you can't really put a money value on the fact that you are therefore allowing some of the machinery, as old as it is, to have a longer shelf life at this time when we obviously need to spend more money on that. So I just want people to know that this is basically, and folks now out there that voted for me say, Harry, you're our watchdog here to try and tell us what's going on. Unless I am like totally in an illusionary world, this is probably one of the best things that's come across the desk of the CCSD since I've been on the board, and I'm sure grateful that it's happening. Thank you.
And I would say there's an additional, even larger picture benefit to the planet of having a smaller carbon footprint.
Absolutely.
So, all right, so let's move on to item I. This is the Balanced Public Relations Contract. Mr. Gruber, would you like to make any statement?
Yes, Madam President. This is obviously item 4I is the consideration to extend the agreement for consulting services with Balanced Public Relations for an additional 6 months. And based on the meeting that I had with the President and Vice President, and knowing the concerns that the board and the community and myself have regarding our available funds, if you will, it was discussed that a 6-month period of time would probably be more realistic. Since that time, I've had the same conversation with President and Vice President regarding tying some kind of deliverables into this contract. In other words, as you know, we have an out 30-day notice, but knowing that it is $7,000 a month, that's still a great deal of money for the community, and whether it's approved or not approved today, we should at least have a conversation regarding maybe 4 or 5 deliverables that we have the expectation of fulfilling for Mr. Flores, and that way, such as water rights, grant opportunities district-wide, not just water and wastewater, but for our forest, possibly maybe the right of entry and just some really major things that the board thinks is important. And so we clearly communicate those to Mr. Flores, but that's just a suggestion that I would have. Maybe that could be a condition of approval for this contract, understanding that Mr. Flores has provided us a valuable service. However, also with the understanding that $7,000 a month is a lot of money. And so with that, I'll just turn it back to the board for deliberation. And I do go to Sacramento periodically. I haven't been in many, many months. We are working on a trip there to cover several items. And so next time I go, hopefully we'll cover as many things as possible. But with that, I'll turn it back over to the board. Thank you.
I also, in conversation with the general manager, somebody said something, I don't know if it was at the budget meeting or the rates meeting, that I somewhat agree with, in that a lot of the things that Mr. Flores is doing on behalf of the district are things that theoretically the general manager or board members could be doing and maybe should be doing, and that my thought way back when relating to Mr. Flores was he does have a lot of contacts in Sacramento, and he gets into the doors of the right people, which is helpful. But once we know that door, do we really need to continue to rely on him was my rationale. And I'm sure that he's watching, because I know he watches these meetings live whenever he can. So hello. But I do want to report some of the things that some of the intangible things that Mr. Flores has managed for the district are things like right now he's following a specific case with the Division of Water Rights relating to another set of rights for water licensing, not ours, but it's a situation that has a cease and desist order related to that water rights, which is something that could potentially have an impact on us if they take that as a wider policy, that if there's some kind of cease and desist order related to the water rights, that maybe they wouldn't be in such a rush to get the licensing done. So that's something that he's keeping an eye on so that he can make sure if it does end up having implications for our district, since we have a cease and desist order from the regional board, these are the kinds of things that he's able to track because he's up in Sacramento. Same thing with, he just knows the right person to go to talk to find out what's the current funding for stuff like our wastewater plant, and where's the grants and what's the grant cycle look like. Now that is stuff that we should be taking notes on so that we can eventually let him go, because we can't afford to have another employee essentially, because as much as he has contacts, we also are still in the process of trying to figure out if we can get funding through the iBank, and we had at the Finance Committee said that we still want to try to find a way to see if there's any way to take advantage of the iBank. And with the change in administration in November, no matter what the change is, it's not going to be the same governor, and the iBank board is all governor appointees. So that dynamic then changes because things change in Sacramento, and so some staff may change, some staff may not, but the thought between Director Berenger and I was that there are still some things that we can maybe accomplish before November, and then to give him the 6-month time period. If he can't bring us back anything, because I don't know what other kinds of tangible thing. He keeps going in and talking to Scott McFarland about the water licensing to try and keep that moving forward. And from the messages I've been getting, they're pretty buried under work up there without a lot of extra help to do the work. So he's keeping we're not on the top of the pile, but he's trying to make sure that we're at least noticeable. And I think that's a valuable thing, because we will not be able to get our regular CDP if we still have these outstanding issues with licensing our water rights. So I think that we may not have the licensing done by December, but he should be able to show some progress or other. And even Scott McFarland has acknowledged that, yeah, I know I keep saying it's going to be in the near future, but really it's going to be in the near future, and sometimes, the pace of government is the pace of government, and that's not really, it's to Dean's credit that we aren't on the very bottom of the pile. And I think that another 6 months at least will give us a good jumping off point, and we can be taking notes. And as far as deliverables, I'm not even sure if there are tangibles that could be, but I'd love to hear from the board what their thoughts are on this, because I am definitely torn on this one. We don't have the extra money. On the other hand, we don't have an extra person to sit up in Sacramento and every month or every other month, poke Mr. McFarland to say, hey, are you still working on this thing? So I think there's a lot to be said for having an advocate there. Director Pearson.
I really would like to see some deliverables of some kind, and getting a resolution on the I-Bank, one way or the other, that would be a deliverable that he could bring back to us. Getting the water rights situation solved by the end of this 6 months, I think, is reasonable. And I think there's others that we could probably present and put into the contract that would give us a better measurement as to whether he's doing what we need done or not. And then in 3 or 4 months, we say, are you making progress on these? And if he's not, then maybe we cut the tie and we figure out something else to do. Or if he's just going to open doors for us and that's all he's going to do, then maybe we can get that done for a couple of grand instead of $7,000 a month. So
I'm not sure how we will resolve the deliverables today except through discussion. So I'm open to suggestions on how you want to move forward on this. Oh, don't everybody jump at once, because I like I said, I'm not sure. I want to hear some arguments here.
Well, I don't know about arguments, but I want to concur with what Director Pearson just said. And I seem to recall when I got elected to the board, and it was the first meeting, and Mr. Flores was here, and I walked up to him and I said, well, how would you feel about us cutting your salary in half from $8,000 to $4,000 a month? And he said, well, I'd be okay with that. So perhaps, and if I remember correctly, and my memory does shift these days, it's something to do with age, I think, and just this gig. But I seem to recall that the last time his contract came up, I voted against it. And I'll probably, if we are voting on to continue it for another 6 months or so, I think perhaps if there's any guidance that we need to give him, and he probably is already aware of this, and I think, like I say, Director Pearson kind of alluded to this, maybe we need to just kind of focus on, well, what are the most important items that we need to move forward on for the needs of this district? And instead of him spreading his energies out, focus on whatever those particular items are, so therefore we might get better results on those. And that obviously doesn't include just the water facility, although that's the reason he was hired in the first place, was to address getting this for the facility approved. So that's just my comment on that.
Director Pearson?
I would make a motion that we continue the current contract with Mr. Flores for 1 more month, and that on the trip that the general manager makes to Sacramento this month, he and Mr. Flores hammer out 3 to 5 deliverables to be included in the new contract and bring that back to us at the July meeting.
So the motion is to extend the contract for a month and get some deliverables together and bring the contract back in July. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, so that is a motion and a second, and I just, under discussion, clarification, I'm going to be going on the trip to Sacramento also, so that'll be, I don't think that I'm going to get to drive the Tesla, but the Tesla. But that, just so you know, that I will be going also to hopefully kind of work. And I think that in spite of the lengthy report that he presents on the different things that he's doing, he is primarily focused on our water rights licensing and on keeping an eye on what's open for the grants. Director Wharton?
I agree. We had a little conversation about this earlier with Director Pearson on the deliverables and the measurables, and how we can't put our hands on something with what we can't put our hands on water rights, so to speak, or the I-Bank. So how do we measure his progress, it's like a 0 and a 1. It's binary, non-binary. It's on or it's off, right? I mean, we got it there. It's a tricky, and does he just? Well, I'm still working on it. I'm still working on it.
Well, and
how far does he still keep working on it before we say what's the point? So we need to have an internal checkpoint for ourselves, so we just don't keep milking, our funds away from us. Because I am sensitive to that, but I do think that he does provide some value, but it's
hard.
These intangibles that we just can't stick it and put it in our pocket and walk away with and say, hey, look what I've got. It's tough that way. So we got to really be careful with how, how much leeway we give them, how much authority we give ourselves to cut it, or what's our limit on that too. So, I agree with Director Pearson in the second as well. So I think that's a great idea to temporarily move this along until we get those, because I think the intangible, the measurables and objectives are great.
And I would just be cautious about, just to play devil's advocate, no offense, that we need to make sure that any of the measurables, there's some things that are completely out of his control. So as long as we're keeping in mind that there's some stuff that it's just completely, it's not on him. Is that what you were saying?
I'm trying to.
Okay, good. Then I think we're all on the same page. Do we have the motion? Do you need Monique? Does anyone want Monique to read the motion back? I think we're clear. Okay, let's have a roll call. The motion by Director Pearson, seconded by Director Farmer.
Director Pearson?
Aye.
Director Farmer?
Aye.
Director Wharton?
Aye.
President Rice?
Aye. The motion passes 4-0. Thank you for the discussion, everyone.
That was a motion only for 4I, right?
And now we need to do H and A.
Yeah, I would make a motion that we approve items 4A and 4H from the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I would just like a slight clarification from Mr. Patera, and I see that, like I say, Mr. Alchin is still here as well. I'd just like to get an idea with regard to this opportunity that's going to become available to us through PG&E to make some major improvements at the wastewater facility. If there's any kind of relative timeline that we can kind of wrap our head around as to how long this entire process would take. Are we talking about a year, 2 years, 3 years? Any way of gauging that at all?
Thank you. Yes, please.
I am back. So as Jerry mentioned, it's sort of staged, right? And one of the things I always say in timing is, assuming you or the entity or the city moves at a certain pace, because oftentimes my work stops and we have political things for a while. And so just talking about the work we do, probably about 8 weeks or so in this first phase where we'll get a good picture of what we think our hunch is, to confirm that or not, and we'll either be moving forward or kill it quickly, right? That's sort of the goal. The second phase is the investment grade assessment, which is, you've seen in reports, about 30 to 50% design documents to get that right. So depending on how much work we decide to move into that will dictate time. But let's just say 6 to 7 months for that. That will include a firm fixed construction cost at the end of that 6 or 8 months. With the measures that still survive, through that process that are still positive, would then come before the board for approval for construction. And construction, I'm just going to say, this can be at wastewater treatment plants, can be significant. I usually say about 12 months of construction, just to use as a budget. One of the characteristics of these projects is you begin to get beneficial use of these equipment, right? So it's not turn the switch and the whole plant comes up or the whole project comes up. So as motors are replaced, as control systems are reformatted and reconfigured, as things are replaced or processes are changed, you'll be getting beneficial use from your energy bill as the project continues. So it's kind of a ramp up, if you will. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. So it sounded like with all those months added together, it's close to about a 2 year 2-year timeline. That's what you said. I wouldn't hold you to that or anything.
No, yeah, I just want to be completely, I mean, most of the volatility or the variability that we have is this process, and I'm not being negative or condescending about it. This is just every place has a different personality. So
Right.
yes, it's not a month's thing; it's a year's thing.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Director Wharton.
Looking at the slide where you talked about the City of San Luis Obispo project, the $10 million project, was that the entire cost? Was that split with the city in any way, or did PG&E front all that in exchange for the $450,000 in total annual savings? Because there was, if I understood right, the payment of that comes in the form of the energy savings, correct?
Yes, I will say that every project's slightly different in the way they come about, right? So San Luis Obispo is specific to San Luis Obispo, but generally, we went through a process where I think we originally identified maybe 21 what we call energy conservation measures or facility enhancement measures, whatever term you want to use for it. And not to be silly, but it goes through a filter process, right? And we ended up, I think, with 9 significant measures. Those were funded a combination of funds that they had in redistributed, if you will, enterprise account funds. So some funds were there. I think that number was about 1.7 or $2 million bucks. And then their finance department sourced the balance of it. We can help typically, but in the case of San Luis Obispo, that happened without us even talking to the finance department. They took the job, took it to the normal channels, and funded the balance of that. It's $7 million or something.
And so then with their decrease in energy spending, they were able to take that money that would have gone to energy to apply towards
right.
the finance.
So that's that's sort of the secret sauce, if you will, is repurposing money that would otherwise be spent on electricity, gas, chemicals, coagulant, all kinds of different things that can be improved in these projects. And so that debt service, if you will, is the result of the reduced cost.
Thank you.
Director Pearson?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. That's all right.
There was also incentives in that project, so about $380,000.
So you're going to help us find money, save money in places.
What I like about the way these are put together is that it doesn't happen if we don't work together and get the right answer, right? So it's in our best interest to find those opportunities. So.
Okay. Thank you. Does that answer your? Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's have a roll call vote. This is for approving consent agenda item A and H.
Director Pearson?
Aye.
Director Farmer?
Aye.
Director Wharton?
I just want to, on the expenditure report, I just like to see that tightened up just a little bit. So, and I think we've discussed that. So that's my comment towards that. So I vote aye.
Absolutely. Thank you.
President Rice?
Aye. Thank you. And thank you very much for coming and for that presentation. That was helpful. And I don't know how we're managing without the person who usually makes every single motion during the meetings.
You're doing
but we
fine.
seem to be doing okay. We miss Jim.
I'd just like to know how Jan's put up with him for 50 years, but don't tell him I said that.
Can we, does anyone mind if we take just a 5-minute break? Is that okay if we take okay, let's take a 5-minute break. We'll be back at 5 minutes till whatever that next hour is. You ready? Okay. Okay. Do you want some fanfare or? All right, I think we're going to get started. Do we have Monique somewhere?
She's outside talking.
Okay. I don't want to start without our person who takes the minutes, so we're going to just wait another
When
minute
she steps
for
out,
her.
it's not good. Something's.
No, I'm assuming that something
She
important.
never steps out. So.
No, I know she's very responsible. So
So what you're saying is we have to wait a minute for the person
who
that takes the
wants to
minutes.
do the hokey pokey?
Oh, I thought.
Wait a minute. Who brought the music today? There you go. Oh, come on, it's my generation. I can handle it. I'm not an old lady yet. I don't want to bother her if she's on the phone, so. Does anyone have any announcements since we're just sitting here waiting?
Well, I can actually give a couple of, I can give my reports from,
But she's not taking the minutes right now, so then it won't be on the record. That's
Oh,
why
okay.
we're waiting, because
All
we
right.
want to make
Well,
sure that it gets recorded,
all right.
right?
Yeah, I was just going to give my reports from the FFRP and the Forest Committee. But
Okay, we're gonna be on break for another couple minutes, because we need to make sure district clerk is taking care of what she needs, yeah.
The Coast Union FFA is showing next month at the county fair.
They are. The Central Coast FFA? Do tell.
Coast Union FFA members, yes, we've got 5 pigs, 11 cows, and 2 goats that'll be going over to the Mid-State County Fair. If you're out at the fair, go out and root on your fellow Coast Union students.
Right on.
And if I could just make a comment, I think that Director Wharton is being slightly modest with regard to his daughter, who won last year and may win again this year. Is that correct?
She didn't win. It was her first showing. She placed in the top 10% of her group.
That's winning.
Yeah.
She did well. Her pig did bring in a nice return on investment, so to say it that way.
Cool.
That's good.
And,
lots of bacon. That's good.
Yeah. So
bring home the bacon.
We're really excited for all of this year.
AGP, are we ready? Okay. Thank you for everybody's patience. We are on to the item 5, which is hearings and appeals. The first item on the agenda is the public hearing to discuss and consider adoption of a resolution. Mr. Carmel.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. This is the final step in the 2017 FRP. It's a collection of the outstanding parcel clearance charges on the tax roll. These are the people that didn't pay when they were directly invoiced by the district. There are, I think, 60 of them, totaling about $19,000 plus dollars. If you'll recall, several years ago, the board recognized that the synergy between our growing season and the tax collection period that the county had didn't fit. So you extended the abatement period and decided to defer collection until the subsequent fiscal year. That's why 2017 is being collected on the 2018-2019. So it's a public hearing. You open your public hearing, take any testimony, objections, make any modifications you feel are appropriate to the itemized cost report, which is Exhibit A to the resolution, and then if everything's in order, adopt resolution 13/2018. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Okay. I would like to open the public hearing on this item. I don't have any requests to speak. Is anybody here that would like to make a comment? If there's no comments, then I will close the public comment testimony and close the public hearing.
I just want to ask a brief question. Can I?
Yep, that's about where we are right now.
Brief. With regard to the charge, the administrative charge is usually $200, and then there's a fee of $100 for folks. How can I say? There's a reduction of $100 if people pay within 90 days. So we have this group of about 60 people that didn't pay on time, but unfortunately, we didn't send out the courtesy notice in December, so we didn't charge that extra $100 that would normally go to somebody that was late.
That's correct. I think what actually happened was the normal administrative fee is $100 if you pay promptly, and then it's $200 if you don't.
Right.
But the notice that would have given them that information never went out, so we're just charging a uniform $100 for everyone.
Right.
Because that's the equitable thing to do.
Yeah, and I know, these things happen. I mean, we all, every once in a while, pay a bill late or whatever. I'm just considering it's 60 people at $100. That's like $6,000. And since I think the community is becoming more vigilant with regard to what is and isn't happening here with regard to our finances. So it's just kind of a bummer that happened.
All right, so I've closed the public hearing, and now I would entertain a motion to adopt Resolution 13-2018, confirming the 2017 Fire Hazard Fuel Reduction Cost Report. Somebody like to make that motion?
Yeah, I'll make that motion as long as I don't have to repeat what you just said.
You just say so moved. And
cool, so moved, yes.
All right, it's been moved. Is there a second to the motion?
I second.
Moved by Director Farmer, seconded by Director Pearson. Is there further discussion on this item before we vote? Ms. Madrid, please call the roll.
Director Farmer?
Aye.
Director Pearson?
Aye.
Director Wharton?
Aye.
President Rice?
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. Thank you, everybody. Next item is item 5B, public hearing to discuss and consider Resolution 12-2018. Mr. Gruber?
Thank you, Madam President. As you indicated, it would be approving a fire suppression benefit assessment consumer price index, otherwise known as the CPI adjustment, at the rate of 4% for fiscal year 2018-19, and confirming the itemized report to collect the assessment on the county tax rolls. And with that, I'll turn it over to District Council Tim Carmel.
Not much more to say. This is consider a 4% CPI adjustment to our fire suppression benefit assessment, which was approved by Cambria, a majority of Cambria's property owners in 2003, and includes a discretionary CPI adjustment annually. That's why it comes back to you. The revenue from this assessment is extremely important to the fire department. It's $469,000 for this fiscal year and sort of critical in the overall scheme of things. It's collected on the tax rolls, and again, this is a public hearing. Open public hearing, consider any evidence that's submitted, and then adopt the resolution if it's appropriate. Be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Carmel. I would like to open the public hearing on this item. Is there anybody, I don't have any speaker requests. Is there anybody that would like to request or like to speak on this item? I just have a question of how we got the 4%, because I think I saw it somewhere in the audit, and of course, because I didn't highlight it, I don't know where it was.
It's in the discussion.
3.7% or something?
Yeah.
Is what? Did you see that too?
Yeah, in the discussion, it says the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics recorded a 4.0 increase for the Los Angeles, Long Beach, Anaheim area for the 12-month period ending April 30th, 2018. So we're using that as our basis.
Okay.
Now, that means that there isn't one for San Luis Obispo County?
That's
there's
the
not.
one that we're based on.
And this is, I think historically, this is the one that we do use. I was surprised at the 4%. I actually called Rudy and said that can't be.
Well, for down there, that's not so surprising,
But I
Yeah.
just,
it's probably less.
this one, I don't know, I thought I saw it somewhere in the audit, actually, and not in the report for this item. I think it was something that but I could have seen it out somewhere else, too, that the inflation rate was not at 4%. But I know this is about 22% of the fire department's funding, and I don't want to, and I know their contracts are up soon, but, they get a regular increase as part of their contract through their union. So I don't have any, I can close the public hearing because I don't have any requests to speak. I would entertain a motion on this item. And the motion would be something to the effect of...
I can go ahead and read that if you want.
That would be great. Thank you, Director Pearson.
I'll make a motion that we approve agenda item 5B, which is to approve the resolution 12-2018, approving the fire suppression benefit assessment consumer price index adjustment at the rate of 4% for fiscal year 2018-2019, and confirming the itemized report to collect the assessment on the county tax rolls.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
So it's been moved by Director Pearson and seconded by Director Farmer. And I think the motion is abundantly clear since it's specific. May we have a roll call, please, Ms. Madrid?
Director Pearson?
Aye.
Director Farmer?
Aye.
Director Wharton?
Aye.
President Rice?
Aye. The motion passes 4-0. Thank you, everybody. Item 5C.
Thank you, Madam President and Board. Item 5C is public hearing to consider adoption of Resolution 14-2018, confirming the itemized report to collect delinquent solid waste collection and disposal charges on the county tax rolls. With that, I'll also turn this over to Tim Carmel, our District Counsel.
I'll be brief, Madam President, members of the board. This item is to collect delinquent solid waste disposal charges on the tax roll pursuant to Health and Safety Code Section 5473.1 at SEC. It's by confirming the itemized report that's Exhibit A to the resolution in your packet. This year, it seems to go down every year as a result of this process. This year, I noticed there are only 4, and I think the total charges were about $1,000, so it seems to be working. Again, it's a public hearing. Open the public hearing, consider any testimony or objections, and then adopt Resolution 14-2018. Be glad to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? I don't have any requests from the public to speak. Are there questions? Director Farmer?
Not a question, but our legal counsel just mentioned that it's 4 people. 2 of those folks are married to each other. So, and they live in Washington. So I guess it's really, when you get right down to it, it's only 3. And, 2 of them live here, so they just kind of need a knock on the door from some of our Italian friends, and that probably could take care of pretty fast. Just a joke.
No,
just a joke.
That's why it's on the county tax rolls and not having, as you say, an Italian. I just want to put my objection on the record to I don't think that that a government agency should be collecting for a private company. I think the collection should be a responsibility of the company that we contract with. This is a policy that a previous board passed, and it is current policy to do it this way. I would like to suggest perhaps in future years, since it has gotten low, that maybe this is something we look at in the future to not having, because this is a private company that gets the benefit of our ability to put something on the tax rolls to get their collections covered. So I support the policy currently in place, but I just want to put my objection on the Director Pearson?
I would imagine that they would up our rates a little bit to compensate for that, because that is right. But we could look for a little extra because they'd have to take over that duty. Not a fun job.
All right, I did open the public hearing, and I don't have any public comment cards. Does anybody would like to? Okay. I would close the public hearing, and I would entertain a motion, which is number 6, if you want to read it. On 5C, number 6 at the top there.
Number 6.
See where it says adopt a resolution?
I move to adopt Resolution 14, 2018, confirming the itemized report, Exhibit A to the resolution, describing each parcel and the amount of delinquent solid waste collection and disposal charges to be collected against each parcel.
Thank you. Is there a second?
A second.
Moved by Director Wharton, seconded by Director Pearson. Let's have a roll call vote, please.
Director Wharton?
Aye.
Director Pearson?
Aye.
Director Farmer?
Aye.
President Rice?
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. Thank you very much. It's a good thing Jim's not here now. Everybody's getting practice. All right, Mr. Gruber, we are moving on to the regular business for the day, and I believe that next up is our audit.
Thank you, Madam President, board members. Item 6A is receive and file the independent audit report for fiscal year 2016-2017. I'm going to ask if our finance manager, Rudy Hernandez, has any comments.
Yes,
and
I do.
we do have David Bruner, CPA, Accountancy Corporation, here to present the audit to the board today after Mr. Hernandez has any comments regarding the audit.
Yes, once again, good afternoon, Madam President, members of the board, and our public. I'm pleased to state that we are presenting our fiscal year 16-17 audit report. I do have a couple of comments. The first one is the audit opinion. The audit opinion is very critical for our district. Okay, what that basically means is we earn what's called unqualified opinion. Unqualified means the financial statements are pretty much free from any material misstatements, that kind of stuff, and they could be relied upon, say, by banks and other external agencies, things like that. So one of the first things that we've been talking about financing, and one of the first things that they always ask for is the audit opinion. And the first thing they look for is unqualified, means clean opinion. Okay, so I'm proud to state to our board that we earned what's called unqualified opinion for the fiscal year 16-17. The other point I want to make is that when we do our budget, okay, the first thing we always look at, okay, we always want a balanced budget where our revenues equals our expenses, okay. At times we have what's called where our projected revenues will exceed our projected expenditures, say by 40,000, 50,000. We call that budgetary surplus, okay, or deficit, whatever, okay. Then once the audit's done, you get what's called, you get the actual surplus or deficit. You know, that's the end product, okay. So I'm pleased to inform our board that for the fiscal year ending 16-17, we actually came out 81,000 to the good on the general fund, which is, you know, that basically, Jerry and I spoke today, and Monique, we spoke about our reserve policy and the areas we want to go. So this was one issue we spoke about this morning, and this is one issue that we'll probably end up talking to our finance committee / infrastructure committee next week about the process of establishing our reserve. So that's linked. So keep in mind 81,000, okay? That's one thing. On the water, I'm sorry, Monique. On the water fund, we actually came out 170,000 to the good, 170,000 as far as increasing our fund balance, okay? Now, on the wastewater fund, that's not very good, okay? And our auditor, David Bruner, will be discussing this in more detail, but I just want to inform the board, according to the audit report, is showing that our fund balance dropped by about 825,000. That's humongous, pretty big. And David will be talking more specifically about that, okay? So anyway, if you don't have any questions, I'll turn it over to him, and maybe during his presentation or maybe after his presentation, I'll be here, as well as David will be here to answer any specific questions the board or public may have. David?
Thank you, Rudy. Welcome.
You're welcome.
Hello? Oh, okay. So, like Rudy said, unqualified opinion, and it was, we were transitioning. Patrick was leaving, Rudy was starting. I was a new auditor, so there was some challenges with all the transition and stuff. But Rudy, hit the highlights, so I'll just open up to you guys, for specific questions.
In terms of specific questions, I think that there was a loan of $466,000, and is that supposed to be that'll be accounted for in the current fiscal year that's going to end in a few days, or?
The way it works, Madam President, that particular item, the loan, shows up on the balance sheet.
Okay.
The only items that appear on the budget is any repayments that the board approves from the wastewater fund to the general fund. Any repayments, that's the only place that you see it in the budget.
Okay, so it's accounted for as a
balance sheet.
Okay,
Yes,
in the balance sheet.
yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that it was in there because we did have a motion we did have a action that the board took to make sure that we could pay it back. We just haven't gotten back to it to determine
That's
how
correct.
we're going to do that.
Madam President, I believe that was discussed during our water and wastewater rate study. That was part of that board's direction to come up with a plan where it can be repaid. So.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And then I know that you provide an opinion that the books are put together fairly and that we can rely on them.
Yes.
Unqualified, which is, I love the way that accounting works. It's always so confusing, backwards and inverse sometimes. As an English major, I especially appreciate the language difficulties that I have with these things. But when you looked at I couldn't quite decipher what the determination was regarding our post-employment benefits, the pension plan. Could you just kind of verbally go through that section about what that says?
Page 125, right, Madam President?
I think.
Yeah.
125?
Yeah, 125 in your agenda packet, I think, talks about retirement. I think that's the area you're focusing on.
Well, that's the management's discussion and analysis. I was thinking of the...
Page 51, you're talking about the other required supplement information?
Yeah, the supplemental. I don't have a 51.
I'm looking from my audit report.
Okay, what's the title of the page?
Title of the page is Other Post-Employment Benefit OPEB Plan.
What page in the audit report?
51.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe 41? It says Other Post-Employment Benefits Plan, the schedule of the funding progress shown below. Is that the page you're on?
That would be on your staff report. It'd be on page 169.
169?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the page I'm on. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So what is this telling me? Is this telling me I'm in over my head deep and we're not catching up, or we're trying to, what does it say about our...
Well, the unfunded liability excess is going down. It's a study that's done every few years. The last one was done 7/1/15, and this is the health insurance, the post after employment benefits, and you do a study of that to factor what that is in your progress toward funding it, and that's what this is. Then the other page, the settle of the district proportional share of the net benefit liability, that is it's accounting. It's GASB 68. The GASB 68 reporting is your pension plan. The way that it was done before, Mr. Crosby, he did the calculations himself. The pension calculations are becoming more and more complex. That a best practice for CPAs is there are firms that specialize just in the GASB 68 and getting the numbers from CalPERS. So I coordinated with Rudy that we had a company do the GASB 68 report for this year that expanded the settles into the to bring the settle up to date to current standards.
Okay.
And also there's been some prior period adjustments and significant adjustments in the pension, and so I brought the GASB 68 company in, me and Rudy, just to verify the numbers. And just as a double assurance on my part that, I can tell you that these numbers give you assurance on.
Okay, and in the I think on page 125 in the management discussion and analysis, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is done by our staff, yes?
Yes, MD&A. I review it, make sure it foots, the totals foot, but yes, the management put that together. I do not audit the MD&A.
Okay, so looking at that, there was something that said about how many retirees we have is something like 22, is that? Is anybody... mostly what I'm trying to get to here, Mr. Gruber, is I understand that we have an unqualified opinion, which means these are numbers that we can rely on. I'm hoping that we didn't have to do a whole bunch of journal entries for corrections as would be done. But I read in here that there was the number of retirees with health benefits. Didn't seem like the number that I'm seeing on the expenditure reports when it lists all the retirees' health benefits.
Can you reference what page, Madam President? 125?
I think 125 was the page.
162 has got a more thorough post-employment benefits, and it has number of active participants is 22.
160,
yes. Then it gives you the numbers and stuff.
And that doesn't seem to jive with what the number of retirees are. When you look at the expenditure report, it looks like there's more than that.
It says 32 retired up above it.
Okay.
On the bottom sentence of the last paragraph on 162.
On page 162, the last paragraph?
Yes,
oh, yeah, 32, I see. Okay. So why is it the number of active participants different from the number of retired employees receiving?
This report, I don't want to shift it. It was prepared by my predecessor. I reviewed it to the best of my ability, my best of my knowledge, and we have.
That's fine. I know with the changeover, it makes it hard. But I just want to make sure because I mean.
So that should be corrected, and if it needs to be corrected, it will change the number.
I also want to say thank you to whoever changed it from the text paragraph format to the tables in here.
Yeah.
Because last year when we were looking at this, and I think I probably even said something about it in the management letter, some of these tables were, like, for example, the table on 125, that was written out in paragraph form in last year's audit. So I want to thank whoever did that on staff to make that more comprehensible, because in paragraph form, it was really hard to even figure out what it was saying. So
and I think
whoever was responsible for that, thank you.
I think my secretary made changes to that.
Thank you for that, because having it as text was difficult to understand.
Yeah, and David and I did discuss the issue. Due to the transitional period, there may be something that we may need to clarify. So our plan that we agreed upon was exactly what just came up. We'll go back and look at it and make any changes to have it reflected correctly. We have to.
Yes.
And the last question that I had on this is, how are we going to get this sooner next year?
I have already coordinated with Jerry and Rudy. Because Patrick was leaving, I didn't get started until end of November, first part of December. Rudy will have everything for me the first week of October. I'm coordinating with Jerry, Rudy. It will either be November or December. You will have the report presented to you.
And why are we waiting until October, Rudy?
No, I think typically, Madam President, I'm new here. This will be my first year with the audit, and I don't want to give any excuses and that kind of stuff.
No, I want to make sure that we are giving enough time to do it,
that's
but
fairly
I want to
standard.
understand.
Yeah, typically, if it's more it's still a learning curve for me also, because I didn't do a lot of this work last year. Patrick did a lot of it, so I want to make sure we do it right. I don't want to have any excuses. Well, because I was in a hurry to do it, it's an oversight. I don't want to give no excuses like that. And that's what we discussed today, a timing where our goal was to have it where he would come out early October to do the compliance testing and also start the actual audit. Okay, so our goal would be have the audit done completely by October. It's done. And then the only reason why we came up with November was because it will be discussed probably with the Finance Committee first.
Yes,
and
I
then
would like to make sure.
preferably maybe sometime in November the board would approve it after the Finance Committee has reviewed it.
Okay. Director Pearson, as the chair of the Finance Committee, did you want to make any specific comments about going forward or this particular one?
Have we contracted with?
We have a 5-year contract right now.
Okay.
Yes.
That we approved last year.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Yeah, and like I said, it will be by the end of December 31st. We also had the GASB 68 company that we contracted with. They didn't get stuff to us until February. Then I got into tax season. So it would and then the flu bug hit my office in December and January. It was just a combination of things. But that will not happen again. And also just, FYI for your information, on this year's contract, I gave Rudy the bill today. I took $1,000 off just as a courtesy to you. So because, yes, it got pushed after tax season. As my sincere apology. I take what I do very seriously, and like I said, we will December at the latest this year, and I'll coordinate with Jerry and Rudy on the timeline.
Okay, and I believe we have a clause in the contract that we can change up if we need to after, because I think that with the finance manager change, there's a lot of things that were out of your control. There's a lot of things that were out of our staff's control, our current staff's control. So I don't want to be punitive on the timing this time, but if it happens again, I don't think it's gonna. I suspect it won't. I suspect it won't.
Yes.
But like I said, I don't want to be I don't want to overreact because there were a lot of moving pieces.
Thank you for that.
And I appreciate your assurance that it won't happen again, Director Pearson.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions.
Go for it.
Okay. The inter-enterprise loans that we currently have. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Between general fund and enterprise fund, yes.
Do we need to draft a formal, okay, here's the amount of the loan, here's the amount of interest we're going to charge, here's the repayment schedule or that kind of thing?
I will be coordinated with Rudy on that in this next year, yes.
Okay.
Yes,
so
that would be one of the things we would be coordinating with him on, yes.
Okay, and I just want, how many of those are there now?
There was one with the water, and then there was a new one with the wastewater this last year, within 16-17.
Okay.
So I will be tightening, working with Rudy to, tighten that up too.
So there's actually 2 outstanding now?
Yes, I believe.
Can I clarify that? I think it's the opposite. I think the wastewater was already
okay.
Everybody knows about the wastewater. Just so you know, again, me and you, when I read the audit report, I go, water fund 124, and I questioned David, is that true? He goes, yeah. So the water fund is something that is probably I didn't know about.
Right, that's the one that surprised me.
Yeah, me too. And I questioned David, and he goes, yeah, okay, so let's discuss it.
Okay, so you'll be working with Rudy to get those letters together and present those to us at some point?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, the Finance Committee.
Yes.
Second, I would like your opinion as to the overall viability of the district finances.
The general fund is in good shape. The water, particularly the wastewater. Usually, last year you got a lot of grants that helped. I mean, in the prior fiscal year that helped with the wastewater. You didn't get this year. But you have challenges. Definitely looking into a rate increase would, probably be a good thing looking at the numbers. But you do have the general fund to help you with your enterprise funds.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I have one question on and then Director Farmer, on the management discussion analysis on page 125 at the very bottom, talks about a miscellaneous side fund, that this is that the final year for paying the safety side fund is 14-15, and the final year for paying the miscellaneous side fund is fiscal year 16-17, at which time the contribution rates should decrease. What's the side fund thing?
Yes, Bruce. David, you want to respond or want me to?
That's within. I would have to go over that with Patrick.
Okay.
That would be a Patrick question.
Okay. Yeah, if you have an answer.
I can give you a general answer. Okay?
Yeah, that's fine. It doesn't have to be. I just don't even know what the miscellaneous side fund thing. What it says.
It's kind of an old. I don't want to say old, but like a loan that was given to the district years ago. I'm talking about maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and every month when we it's part of the PERS funding, so that's what the loan's related to. So every month we make our PERS contribution payment. Part of that payment goes to pay for that loan, side loan. Okay, and then after, again, happened about 15 years ago, and I think what Patrick was stating here, that we just have a couple of years left to pay off that loan, okay?
So is that the unfunded liability that I see, or that's a different one?
My opinion, to the best of my knowledge, it is.
Okay.
It had to do with some unfunded portion back 15 years ago.
Okay.
So districts like our size, small ones, were given loans by PERS. They're giving 15-year loans, so we're finally down to our last year.
Oh, I see. Okay. Thank you. That's helpful.
Madam President, just one last important critical point.
Yes.
I like what Patrick pointed here, because what that basically means is once that the loans are paid off, okay, a lot of times what that means is the PERS rates will drop a little bit. So that's why he's mentioned about the decrease in the rates. I believe he mentions that. And the reason why I know that, because I dealt with it before. Okay, so it's a good thing for our district.
And when you were doing the testing on the different numbers and everything, was there anything that stood out to you that we might want to be aware of in general? Like just went?
Yeah, it was hard because, like I said, the transitioning between Rudy and Patrick, and then just closing the books, because we had two different people closing the books. So I'll be, me and Rudy will be coordinating, so this year will be much tighter closing. So I get that would be hard to say with everything being in transition. So I think this year will be a much more firmer.
Seems like when transition is when you want to be more sure about what's happening with the numbers. I understand why it isn't the case, but...
But I verified everything. So yes, but the closing of the books was rougher because there was Patrick and because there was Rudy. I anticipate, with Rudy closing the books this year, it'll be a much tighter closing.
Okay, great. Director Farmer.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you for being here today and answering our questions in a rather understandable manner. Thank you so much. So I just want to, just out of curiosity, the pages that are like Roman numerals, down on the bottom, like starting, well, for example, the pages in like the 120s on the top. Were those that you wrote, or were those that were written by district staff?
That's the management discussion analysis. That is by staff.
Okay.
I just read over it, make sure it fits. I maybe change the tables to make them look a little clearer. But yeah, this is the staff puts together. Yes.
Okay. Well, I'd just like to ask you some kind of clarification on some items here. So, with regard to costs to the district, so it says retirement is the most. Oh, I'm sorry, page 125. And just right under those tables there, it says retirement is the most expensive employee benefit of the CCSD. And then you go to the next page and it says employee health insurance is the second most expensive employee benefit of the CCSD. And then finally, third, retirement health insurance is the third most expensive. You get the idea. So, and like in recent years, you've heard about various governmental agencies of various sizes kind of ultimately being like overwhelmed by these costs, and either not being able to pay them to the amount that they said they were, or they just kind of, things get really bad. And then we go down here at the bottom and it says, while personnel costs are the largest category of expenditures, another cost area, this is on page 126, another cost area warrants discussion. These are maintenance and repair costs. The vast majority are related to maintenance and repair costs at water and sewer infrastructure. And they're talking about, on the next page, there are significant deferred maintenance in both water and wastewater funds, and just kind of an ongoing situation here. So I'm just curious, from your personal experience in auditing agencies, and when you come up with something like these things that I've just mentioned here, what would be your, let's say, what would be your opinion as to how things are going to evolve into the future? You mentioned earlier about, well, rate increases should help with some of this, but what is your professional opinion as to where the district is at with regard to these, like I say, employee expenses, costs, and then what's going on with infrastructure? Do you see this very often? And if you do see this, how do the agencies deal with these problems?
Yes, the wastewater that is common. I've seen with other districts, they do wastewater expansion. They have to do fixing the wastewater plant. Usually, a lot of times what happens is they will go out and get other financing. Then once the project is completed, they can qualify for grants and assistance from USDA or from State of California. And so that comes in, and then that helps them to recoup a lot of these expenses. I had two districts that are, very poor districts where the population was it was a low income area. And so they got, a large amount of grants. But from my understanding is that, that once you complete the project, then you can get grants, and there are grants and money available to help you to cover that cost. That's what I've seen in the past.
Well, it would be helpful if that did happen for us, but I seem to recall in the past the comment has been made that because we're not a low-income area and are seen, whether it's reality or not, is seen as fairly affluent community, that our ability to obtain grant funding is rather limited in that regard.
Yes. Also, you have challenges with your growth limit. You have limits on growth. That is, pose challenges for you too. So, but yeah, one of the things I want to make sure is to get you the accurate numbers, so you know what the numbers are, so you can make informed decisions, knowing what the numbers are. And then you have the numbers and you can make decisions based on those.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'll probably have some questions for Rudy, but I don't know if it has to do with the audit necessarily. But thank you for your comments.
No problem. Thank you.
So I have a question on the statement of net position.
Okay.
This is, I'm looking at page 130 in the staff report. I think it's the second page of it's under basic financial statements. There's an intangible asset that's the water master plan, net of amortization. That's $1,181,000.
Okay.
So, how was that valued or depreciated? I mean, I'm just curious. I know what it is, but I'm just curious.
That was the original complete cost of it, and then it's being amortized. I would have to double check the life it's being amortized over, but that was the complete cost of the plan, and then it's being amortized.
Meaning we take off a certain amount each year.
Yes. The amortization, it's been...
It looks like last year it was at 1.289 million.
It's probably over 10 years, I would imagine.
To see if I can.
Because we passed it in 2007. So if it's over 10 years, wouldn't it?
107,419 a year is being amortized.
107. Okay, that makes
So
and
you're
that makes
probably
sense.
looking at maybe 12 years it'll be amortized down to zero.
Down to zero. And this maybe is a question for, I don't know if this is a policy question or not, but that water master plan is a touch out of date since it includes a full ocean desal plant in it. I mean, I would just argue that I don't know how much current value it still has, and I don't know if that matters within the audit or not. Because it's an asset, it counts against the liabilities.
Right. Can I respond to that, Mayor?
Yes,
I'm sorry,
please. I would appreciate it.
Yeah,
Yes.
President. Yeah. One of the things that we look at, and David and I will be doing that, is we look at not just the tangible is something you physically can touch, intangible you can't touch it. Okay, but one of the things we evaluate as part of the year end of the audit is that asset still. Is it still going to live the rest of its useful life? For example, let's say we have $1 million in intangible assets, okay? Right now, maybe we have another 10 years left of amortizing it, okay? But we evaluate it and say, you know what? There's no way it's going to last another 10 years, okay? So it's only going to last another 5 years. So at that point in time, we have to adjust our year-end books to reflect the actual value of what it's really worth. Not 10 years, but maybe 5 years. So that's part of the yearly annual audit process that we do.
Okay, so I know we've spent a not insignificant amount on our EIR for the sustainable water treatment facility. Is that something that is an intangible asset that we would be counting, or no?
What kind of cost?
It's the EIR for the.
I'd have to learn more about the specifics. Okay, it may. My response is may not. Maybe that would be a appropriate response.
That's totally cool response. I just was curious because it's a similar.
My guess is yes.
Director Pearson.
My guess is yes, that it would be.
Yeah. So
it's an environmental impact report for the sustainable water facility. So my guess is yes.
So that might be something that would probably be, to count against our liability. I mean, we have no small amount of liabilities, so.
Yeah. As we know, folks, a lot of times when we have depreciation expense increase or intangible assets increase, what that basically means our expenses are higher.
Right.
Okay, so that kind of puts another issue that we have to address as part of the audit.
Okie doke. I think everything else that I have questions on are questions that are beyond the scope of the audit. So,
I have one more.
Director Pearson and then Director Farmer. Sorry, I'm not ignoring you. Sorry.
Yeah, I had one more question that I missed. On page 153 of the packet, auditor's report number 25, page 25, I guess. It's the Node 5 long-term debt continued, and we have the net pension liability under the government activities had an addition of 1.8 million plus.
That I was tying that back to the GASB 68 report. There had been considerable adjustments and prior period adjustment with the prior CPA Crosby. So one of the reasons I had the GASB 68 report was to get some solid numbers. So it's probably some prior some prior period adjustments included in that, but I don't believe this next year you'll have that type of adjustment. That was adjusting it to the GASB 68 report to a solid number.
Okay, so our actual liability because of that adjustment, okay, went up by that amount.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that ties back to the GASB 68 report.
So we're now over $5 million in net.
Yeah, I think it's just over 5,126,647 between the safety and miscellaneous risk pool.
There's two types of costs. Jerry's asking a good point. There's what's called normal costs. Normal costs are the ones that we pay for our day-to-day PERS expenses, okay? And then we have what's called the unfunded liability.
Right.
We have separate payment, and that goes towards this particular net pension liability. And that's factored into our budget. Yeah, there's two types of PERS expenses we factor in. One is a normal cost, and the other is the unfunded portion.
Okay, so for 18-19, we need to make an adjustment up in the amount that we are holding back for unfunded.
The good news is that was reflected in the 18-19 budget.
That is in the 18-19
Yeah.
budget. You cranked that up sufficiently to cover this.
Yes. And in fact, it's stated right at the beginning of the cover.
Yeah,
the cover letter.
I remember we moved it up because PERS changed their formula.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I didn't know that we also took this into account.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes. And I want to make it very clear, and I think Monique and I spoke about it, so Jerry did also, okay? Because I know that from experience, we do have an actuary who represents our district. And a lot of times they I don't know if they used to, I don't know about now, they have like a 5-year figure that we can use. Okay, this year is this dollar figure, next year is this, and so forth. Okay, I've been talking to Jerry and Monique about someday getting a hold of that report, and that'd be something good to share with our board and our public.
I would like to see that. Yes.
Yeah. So that's but no, the good news is PERS, they give us a report annually that shows, okay, this is your unfunded portion payment you got to make for this year. Next year you got to pay this much. Okay, so but the one for 18-19,
and we can overfund that, right?
You can, but with our cash flow, I wouldn't recommend that at this point.
Well, I understand.
Yeah.
If we get our cash flowing and we get some grants and that kind of thing, and we start to have reserves that make some sense, we might be able to overfund the PERS to get our overall liability down.
Yeah, that's it. The answer is
yes.
And looking at the expenditure reports, it looks like at least for the current fiscal year, not the one in the audit, we're paying, it's about each month, there's 2 payments that are the regular payments that go to PERS, and then there's an unfunded liability amount that matches essentially half of the full month. So we pay as if there were 3 pay periods in the month, so we're paying half again, which is getting us somewhere, but we probably need to bump that up to get...
Well, especially since we're now at over $5 million.
Right. So doing half
amount.
again is going to take, so $20,000 a month is not going to really put a dent in $5 million is what you're saying.
We need to look after that in coming years.
I'm so thankful we have a standing finance committee. Director Farmer.
Well, the only member of the Standing Finance Committee right here is sitting at this moment. I just wanted to point that out. But that was a joke. I'm just trying to create a little levity here. Sorry. So on page 152, which was right across from the page that we were just on, I'm noticing down here, note payments are as follows. And I am not a financial expert by any stretch of the imagination. But I want to ask, first off, some clarification as to why the total, it says the note payments are as follows, and then in the first segment there, it says the total is $12,674,222. And then down below where it says total future debt service payments by activity are as follows, and that amount is like $12,723,006. Why is there like a discrepancy there of what about the little not quite $100,000, maybe, it's about $75,000 to $50,000. What is the difference there?
The top is the business type activities. The bottom is the business type and governmental activities. If you'll see the last,
I see.
The last two, I know but I'm trying, because if you see the page before, it had the governmental I guess, table, then the business table, and then a combine of the two.
Okay.
So it's the two combined.
Yeah, and for those folks watching, whenever you are, just to let you know that the long-term debt that the district has through the year 2037 is about $12.5 million, and about 90% of that is for the water facility that we have. I just wanted to point that out. That's not on you. If I could go back, sorry to be jumping around here, to page 127, and these are like the Roman numeral numbers, so they don't necessarily apply to the auditor here, but to what staff has written. So on page 127, it has a list of maintenance and repair costs over the past, let's say, 10 years. And the amount started at just under $300,000. Then it's jumped at certain points up to over $1 million. And so the amount that we've spent on maintenance and repair, mainly to water and wastewater, has gone up. And then it says, despite all of these expenditures, there are still significant deferred maintenance in both water and wastewater funds. And it says, even with the large increases noted above that I just mentioned, a large number of projects necessary to maintain water and sewer services have been identified, and these costs have the possibility of creating serious economic consequences for the CCSD. So I hesitate to ask this question because it's kind of frustrating. I do want to point out that 3 of the 4 people sitting here at this dais, myself, a year and a half on the board, an accumulation of about a year, a little more than that, between the 2 other members of the board. So, I mean, we weren't around when a lot of this was going on, but to me, it's like, I don't know whether the word is frustrating or whether the word is alarming. And one has to wonder, with all this money that's been spent, like it says here, there are still other projects that create serious economic consequences for the CCSD. And one has to wonder, well, how and why did it get to this point? And do you see circumstances in other districts where something like this is taking place?
You can comment, then I can comment. Go ahead. So I want you to take a pen, and I want you to write this here, okay? And I want you to write, Jerry Gruber started in November of 2010. I want you to write that. I want everybody to write that down, okay?
Okay.
Prior to November of 2010, I can't tell you what the hell happened. Well, I can, but I'm not going to go into it. Well, and so when I came on board, we started spending money. We started spending money on making the necessary repairs. Now, what happened prior to my arrival in November of 2010 is they would budget, Director Farmer, they would budget money for necessary repairs. It wasn't derived from a CIP list. It was derived from, okay, the budget's being formulated. I want you guys to put some wish lists together, and then the water and wastewater guys would come forward and put a wish list together. And then historically, the projects wouldn't get done, so we started building reserves. This is a really good question. We started building reserves in water and wastewater. So when I came on board in November of 2010, the water and wastewater actually had reserves. So we spent that down. You can see in 2009, 2010, the tail of 2010, we started making the necessary repairs based on our available resources. We didn't have a lot of resources based on our rate structure. You know, 380,000, 419 jumped up to 530, 798, 1,023,000. and we tapered off a year, then we jump back up, then we jump back. So we've been putting a lot of money into the infrastructure. But prior to this, prior to this 2008, 2009, I wasn't, I'm not really, I would say that the things that were needed to get done weren't getting done. So that kind of tells a story. We have spent a great deal of money, but and what's interesting now is if you look at 2017, 2018, that's the fiscal year we're in right now, 2017, 2018. We've kind of stopped. I mean, there still is a lot of repairs that need to be done at the wastewater treatment plant. I think we all agree on that. But because of all this, we've kind of stopped the hemorrhaging. We've really got to the point, and it shows in this unaudited figure that the wastewater plant, we still are working in deficit, but not nearly as much before. So I know it's a long story, but it's an important story to tell. Again, so when I came on board in November of 2010, we had $300,000 or $400,000, I think, in each reserves and water. And it's not because the rate structures were set in place to allow those reserves to be there. It was because deferred maintenance.
Yeah.
Let me tell you another story just real quick. And we were looking at my first staff report, and I'd like to share this with the board. My first staff report as as utility manager in probably November, December, Monique, of 2011. What?
That was the deferred maintenance?
Yeah, deferred maintenance.
I think it's February.
Yeah, so about February, after about 3 months being on board as utility manager, then I became general manager in April. And I was criticized for this. I came in with the staff report, a pretty strong staff report, and we can provide it to the board. It said, your infrastructure has pretty much lived it's at the end of its life. And it's like, wow, this guy just walked on the scene and he's saying your infrastructure has lived its life. So I just was let the board know from a policy standpoint that it lived its life back then. There was something else I was going to say. So that's kind of, this is, a lot of these years represent catch-up on deferred maintenance, and I think we're at a pretty good point right now because the board's going to be considering rate increases, whatever you decide on from a policy perspective. But then partnering with PG&E, I'm optimistic that we're catching up for all the years of neglect. So I know it's a long story, but
So looking at the management's discussion and analysis from prior years of audits, this statement is basically in all of them. When are we going to stop seeing the statement, despite all the expenditures, there's still significant deferred maintenance? When is that? Where's your point where you're going to say, we're finally caught up on the deferred maintenance, now we can be on a proactive, regular maintenance program? What's going to be your trigger for that?
I think probably about 2 years out. And what I would like to do is, and only because the equipment that we have now is in need of replacement, a lot of it, versus preventive maintenance. In other words, we've taken really good care of things, but they have reached their end life. And I actually think right now we've turned that corner. I think if you talk to John and you talk to Jason, I think we've turned that corner. And so I would say now from okay, we got to fix it now, it's breaking, we got to, and that's why we were spending in deficits out of the general fund, hundreds of thousands of dollars in wastewater. I think all the preventive maintenance we've done, and I don't want to paint a picture better than it is, but all the preventive maintenance we've done has got us to the point at the wastewater treatment plant, not necessarily the collection system, where everything is mechanically holding together, although it needs to be replaced. So I would say if we partner with PG&E, we can even expand the scope of that assessment. Maybe.
Wait, let me just time out.
2 years. I would say 2 years.
I don't even really need the answer because I know that's almost an impossible question to ask, and especially on the spot. But this is a question that you, as general manager for the district, you should keep in the back of your mind. Like, what is that trigger for when that we're no longer in that space, because I mean, you can't tell me right now what the specific projects, once we get A, B, C done, but that is the answer that we need to have as a board when we're looking at the budget and when the infrastructure committee is looking at what needs to be done. What is it that needs to be done to get that? Because to me, that statement, we need to do everything we can to get rid of that sentence in a very real way, so that we're no longer saying we've spent all this money but we still have all this deferred maintenance. We need to set some sort of goal, and I think that's part of the job of the general manager to look at that. And I wouldn't expect 2 years, 10 years, $100,000, $10 million, or you can just be guessing right now, but that is something we should be trying to get into a solid set of goals for the district, I think.
I agree. And, it's resource driven. I've said it, time and time again. It's interesting. I found a page, and gosh golly, there's a statement in here that I think is really, really interesting, and it talks about why we're in the situation we are. And it references two things, and it references, help me out here, Rudy, we talked about it.
Yeah, I know. Let me look.
It references two things.
Page 124.
Just very briefly.
Okay, so this is really a powerful statement, whether it's written by staff or whoever. Two significant factors other than the general, 124.
124?
And this ties in Director Farmer's question. I think it answers Director Farmer's questions. No matter where you are on the political spectrum of this, two significant factors other than the general economic situation of the current drought impact the financial strength of the CCSD. They are minimal capacity fee revenue and stagnant customer base. So I'm not making a policy statement about connection fees or not. That's a reality. The other one is a minimal amount of rate adjustments over an extended period of time. That's the other variable. In water and wastewater, there are no other variables other than maybe grant funding. Here it is in the audit report, but those things are something that we need to keep into consideration. And those are just, we all want to be sensitive, but we got to find a balance between meeting the infrastructure needs and finding a rate structure that's palatable to the community. So,
Director Farmer.
Yes, thank you. So two significant factors other than the general economic situation and the current drought impact the financial strength of the CCSD. They are minimal capacity fee revenue, stagnant customer base, and, if I could just be so bold, to add on page 127, as we go down near the bottom here, sustainable water facility project, a deficit of $1,350,000, and the ongoing monies that we're spending on this facility that isn't operating. You can talk about these other burdens that we're or problems that we're dealing with, but the bottom line is the money that we're spending on this facility is the elephant in the room, and we cannot ignore that. And the fact that we have, as we know, we're going to be spending, just to buy it back from the bank, $660,000 a year until the year 2034, and this does not include the ongoing monthly expenses of maintaining a facility that isn't running. I just want to put that out there because that's reality that we're up against. And not everybody agrees with how I'm feeling and what I'm saying right now, but that's the reality to me. Thank you.
It is a reality that we do have that burden, and it's also a reality we have to find a way to make that burden somewhat lighter, both on the community and the district. But the reality of the dollars is the reality of the dollars, and we don't have a lot of choices based on decisions that were prior made, so we have to go forward, hopefully, in a way to minimize those costs that we have, the ongoing costs for not operating, but have something as a backup in case we need it to be able to operate it. It is a conundrum, but I don't think it's something that can be undone at this point. I mean, I'm open to suggestions. Somebody can explain how we can undo it? I'm there. I think that we don't need to have a motion. This is just a receive and file. Director Pearson, do you think there would be value of having the Finance Committee look through this kind of as an educational thing, or is there any thoughts on that?
I've already sent it on to them and asked them to look it over.
Okay.
And Mr. Sigler has gotten back to me and given me some feedback already. But I think at some point in time, and it may be when Mr. Bruner comes back next year, the Finance Committee will be able to dig in even deeper to
and earlier
what's
maybe in the
going on
process
and that kind of thing, and we can spend some real interesting time with him because we have a couple of people on that committee that are very, very in tune to all of this stuff, so that'll help.
Okay, and is the rest of the board comfortable with that direction that the Finance Committee is going to take? Okay, so we have consensus moving forward that that's kind of what we're going to do as a board. I appreciate you being here and hanging out so long with us.
Thank you. Yeah, and if the Finance Committee have any questions, run it by Jerry Rudy. I'm always available. Teleconference, whatever you need. I'm here to serve you guys.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I just want to make a comment, Mr. Bruner. You've kind of probably had to deal with a little more than you anticipated when you walked up to the podium. And I want to thank you for what appears to me, and I'm no expert, your professionalism and your patience. And thanks for being on board.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity to serve the district.
All right. Next item is item 6B.
I'm going to introduce this because District Council has a conflict on it.
Madam President, I have a conflict of interest. They're a client of the firm I work with, so I have to leave the room. They're a source of income to me.
Oh, no motion or just to receive the audit? I'm sorry, Madam President. Okay. Item 6B is discussion and consideration to approve amendment agreement for consulting services with Techtegrity and authorize an additional $1,500 for labor costs. As you recall, Madam President, you had asked that this item be brought back, and because you felt that we were paying an additional amount that we shouldn't be paying based on the terms and conditions associated with our contract. And staff appreciates that. And so what we did is we did a detailed analysis on what Techtegrity has done for us. We also included in here that Techtegrity wrote off a considerable amount of charges associated with our server and things like that. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Monique, and if she really kind of handled this more so than I have, and I don't want to miss anything. But I know that the board didn't feel comfortable about paying Techtegrity the extra $1,500, and if there's anything, Monique, you want to add to it, or?
Yes, when this came before the board previously, the board had some indications or some concerns that we weren't getting a good deal for whatever the amount was that we had written off, and wanted to know what that amount was. So that amount ended up being, as I recall, 40 hours they wrote off, and they charged us for 12 hours, 10 or 12 hours. I'm sorry, I can't remember exactly. It's 12 hours, I think. So, when our contract actually is an estimated number of hours, so they could have easily charged us for the additional 52 hours. But they didn't. They worked closely with us, and we really appreciate that. This overage amounts to 3.3% of the contract amount.
Okay. I don't have any requests to speak on this item. Is there any discussion? Director Pearson?
Just thank you for getting all the detail to us and that kind of thing. I appreciate it. And I would move that we approve the amended agreement and move forward.
I'll second.
Moved by Director Pearson, seconded by Director Wharton, and I appreciate the additional detail. We go over contract estimate amounts on every single project this district does. This is where I'm putting my foot down, even if it's $1,500. We have to at some point say, this is the bid you gave us, this is the bid you should be paying, and that's my position on it. It's up to the board. Let's have a roll call vote.
Director Pearson?
Aye.
Director Wharton?
Aye.
Director Farmer?
Aye.
President Rice?
No. The vote passes 3-1. Thank you very much. Thank you for the extra work. Item 6C.
Thank you, Madam President and Board. Moving right along here, we're making good time. A discussion and consideration regarding review of CCSD policies and possible creation of the ad hoc committee. This is an extension of a request made from the board last board meeting asking that this be put on the agenda. Under discussion, as President Rice has requested that this item be placed on the agenda for this meeting to discuss and consider providing for a comprehensive review of all CCSD policies and potentially creating a district policy manual. President Rice has also indicated that she would like the Board of Directors to consider appointing an ad hoc committee to review the CCSD policies and make recommendations to the board. Staff feels...
Can I just stop you right there?
Yes,
we don't need to read through the report.
Okay.
Because this is the reason this is on the agenda is it was brought up both by Director Farmer and myself. There are some areas of policy that it would be helpful to have a committee to be looking at, and the interests of Director Farmer had mentioned were grants and water resource management, conservation, efficiency, that sort of, if I understood correctly, and my interest was in overall looking at the policies to make sure that the written policies match what's happening on the ground. Doesn't matter to me which way it goes, but they should match. The reason I wanted to make sure that we have this on the agenda for board discussion is I have a suggestion that I think may work without causing additional work for staff that the general manager is objecting to, even though there's part of our bylaws say that if we want to have committees, we have committees, and they're supported. But I understand the limitations of our resources, both for staff and money and time. My suggestion and what I would like to have is I would like to make sure that the full board is, so to speak, on board with this idea, which is to have a policy committee that is essentially a subcommittee of our finance committee, and they would begin with looking at the current policies relating to finance. So the purchasing policy, the credit card policy, and other things that impact the financial part of the district, and that would be a subcommittee of a standing committee, so that we would have, so that it's not its own committee, and that there would be a subcommittee of the infrastructure committee that would look at the water resource management and grants, potential grants issues, to kind of keep a closer eye on those things. And the chair of the other committee isn't here, and so it may be the case that directors would be more comfortable if he were. I don't know, but that's my suggestion, because I think it will help us get to where this board needs to be, which is to looking to the policies, because there's cities in this country that have policies that say when you buy a new vehicle, you buy electric, or you buy hybrid, or you buy American even. And we do always buy American. We buy Fords, I think, almost exclusively. But we don't have a specific policy on that. So we could be doing things like saying no more styrofoam cups at the meetings. I mean, seems like a little thing, but these are the kinds of policies we could be putting in place in our purchasing policies. We could be putting in place policies regarding rainwater catchment and rebates for those kinds of projects, or demonstration gardens or things like that, that I think that it's beneficial for the board and the district that we have that opportunity. Now, I want to be sensitive to the fact that Director Wharton is not on a standing committee, because I don't want to leave you out. I want to be very clear about that, I'm very cognizant of that, and I feel kind of like you're not participating in, and I don't want that to be, I don't want you to feel left out. But that's my suggestion, and so I'm just looking kind of for I'm just looking for concurrence, and whether that's a good idea, or whether you'd rather take a different road, or you don't think that, because I think two people on each committee could take kind of a little side job. There's enough passion, I think, among the folks that are serving on these committees that we could get that done. Director Wharton.
Were you through? My comments on this were, we've formed these two standing committees. They're in their infant stages right now, and they're just kind of learning to walk. I think adding an additional charge such as this, let's let them get through their initial charge that we gave them first. And there's going to be some policies probably born from that. So let's move, when we look at forming this ad hoc committee down the road, after they're done looking at the finances and they've made their recommendations of what it is that we've charged them with initially, then as they meet, because right now they're meeting a couple times a month, David?
Once a month is what we want to be meeting.
You want to be meeting once a month. You are meeting
twice a month.
Okay.
Most months. Yeah. But it's budget cycle and it's catch up. Okay, we're trying to get everybody up to speed and that kind of thing on the finance committee. So
let's let them get through this process. However many more meetings we need to go, whether it's 1 month, 2 months, 6 months down the road. Like I said, there might be some policies that are just born naturally from this that we could form. So I think doing this might even be a distraction to the bigger initial charge that we gave these two committees. And I think there's probably would be even better discussion, better ideas, better policies formed if it was a focused idea as opposed to going scattered, all different things. Oh, look, a new shiny object. Let's go over here. Oh, no, let's go over this way.
There are more things on the finance committee's thing, but we could put this on the agendas for both of the standing committees and get their input on what they would want to do with it, and then if they wanted to form the ad hoc and have two people, and it would be ad hoc, it would not be public or anything like that. They would basically be sitting down with the general manager and going through on a project basis of, okay, let's look at all of them. Okay, let's concentrate on these two first, and that kind of thing. So, I'm fine with putting it on the agenda after the 11th. The 11th is going to be packed. So the next time the finance committee meets, we'll just discuss that maybe first, get that out of the way, and then go on with the rest of our stuff that we've got on the dais.
Mr. Gruber.
Staff has essentially got 6 board meetings a month right now with these two standing committees. I'm not whining. I absolutely concur with Director Pearson. I mean, we're committed to death right now, and by adding 2 more, I don't think it's a good idea. And the other thing is I just got a CSD policy manual for everybody. We made copies of it. I mean, policies are what the board should come up with, and I'm going to say this as nice as I can. That's your responsibility, and if you defer that to somebody else, it's your job to come up with policy. I could simply come to the board, each board meeting, and say, okay, here's 5 policies, board, do you want to adopt them or not? But now you're putting that, and you can disagree with me, you probably will, but now so you've taken your authority and really That's what drives the district is policy, and we don't have policy. And we've talked about policy and the development of policy for a couple years now. You're taking that authority that you should be doing. You should be putting policy together, working with me. You've put it down to your standing committees, and now you've taken it a step farther, and you're going to put it down below to ad hoc committees. And it shouldn't work that way. As a governing body, and if Director Berenger was sitting here, I would tell him the same thing. As your general manager, I need you, as an elected board, to work with me to develop policies. We don't need subcommittees or committees developing policy. We need to work together. Our relationship is to develop those policies. So that's just my thought on it. Board is here to support your decision. You're the electeds and whatever you, but I would be amiss to not comment on how frustrating it is right now for staff. We've discussed a plethora of other priorities. And I just want you to know that those plethora of priorities that you've discussed are going to have to compete now with these other two subcommittees that you're talking about. I also think that you're in the genesis of this, and I also think you should go back and reevaluate the scope of the Finance Committee. It's way too broad to say all financial related matters is that means anything and everything related to finance. If you want the Finance Committee as a standing committee to be effective and truly be effective and make recommendations to you as policymakers, you really, after a 6-month period of time, need to narrow that scope to A, B, C, and D. So see what happens when you send me to leadership conference. Thank you.
I didn't hear a change in the opinions of committees since before the conference, so I'm glad that you went to the conference, but I don't think it made a difference on this front. I want to be very clear. My intention in having support for any committees, standing, ad hoc, is to limit the detailed discussions that are required to come to some of the higher level decisions that the board has to make. The ad hoc committees, standing committees don't make decisions. They don't make policy. They help formulate it. They wordsmith things so that we don't have to be at the board meeting wordsmithing things. And the point of having committees is to limit the amount of time that the board as a whole has to spend. Now, here's a problem that you can have with committees. If the board members don't trust each other to take the recommendations that come out of the committees, that's problematic. Because if I don't trust Director Pearson to give me a good recommendation after he's looked at it in detail and discussed it with a group of people that have agreed to look at it, well, then that's a problem for the board. But I'm not in any way suggesting that the committees would be creating the policy. What I'm saying is General Manager Gruber just said we should be dealing with policy. He should be bringing us policies, but what we get every month is not a set of policies to look at. What we get every month is contracts to approve and hearing items to pass through that need to go onto the tax rolls. I'm not seeing items on the agenda related to policy. I think in an effort to be supportive, to provide information regarding opportunities relating to grants or new practices relating to water management or water conservation, or missing or incongruent policies that need to be, and these are, I'm not talking about the policies that are part of the law. I'm talking about the policies that we actually were elected to try to have a vision for the district. Does our vision include giving everybody a truck to go home? Right now it does. And so having the discussions on those things so that the general manager both has the authority to do what he needs to do to run the district, but then also the limitations that help the district run smoothly and fairly for everybody. That's what my attempt to do this, and in making subcommittees was not to diffract any of the information. It was to help focus in a way, help focus both committees on some items that might be a good place to start. Now I understand where you're coming from for sure, and I hear what the general manager's saying, but I also know that there are districts much smaller than ours that have more committees that are all standing. So because this is a new thing and rearranging how we manage the staff, how the general manager manages his staff to take care of the things the board is asking for, I'm sensitive to that. But there's something to be said for who's driving? Who's driving? Director Wharton.
So, General Manager Gruber, were you hinting at that, like if I had a policy, just to use President Rice's, we only buy electric, we only buy American or whatever vehicles, that we draft that policy and schedule time with you in your office, sit down with you, we draft it, and then we bring it back towards the board? Is that what you were suggesting? Or
that could work, but I think also maybe what we could do is take. So instead of reinventing the wheel, we purchase the policy manual that covers different categories for the CSDA. Very well-written policies. They're incorporated. There's over 2,000 special districts in California. Many of those districts take those policies and implement them. What I would like to do is take that document, and there's portions on governance, there's portions on finance, there's portions on human resources, things like that, and somehow collectively as a group, a general manager board relationship, go through that and say, okay, we would like to adopt this policy, this policy, this policy, this policy, and then we can start working on bringing those back to the board from consideration. But we're receptive to whatever the board wants to do. This is, as Madam President said, it's really who's driving the train. We're both driving the train. It's your train, but I'm the engineer, and I'm the conductor, and I'm the guy that collects the tickets. But it's your train. So we'll do whatever we need to do to make it work.
We could accomplish what you were suggesting by having a second meeting each month that just covered policy.
Wouldn't be, whatever you guys want to do.
That would accomplish a similar goal wuthout having committees, ad hoc or sub.
Or maybe even a quarterly type meeting, not to put so much more meeting, because what's the difference between our meeting versus an ad hoc committee? I don't see that there would be much difference between the two.
And I've identified 17 out of that manual right now that I think we need to, implement 17 policies that I think would be really, really good for the district.
So you're saying we could just skip the committee part of the process and go straight to having board discussion on these policies? You feel confident in doing that?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Instead of having committees review it first?
Absolutely. An example, when I was city manager, one of our weaknesses was in the HR area, so we would bring 4 or 5 HR policies every 2 weeks to the city council, and they would adopt them. Then you start building that, but it needs to be a consensus amongst all of us. That's the most important part.
Director Pearson?
That's 17 in addition to the ones we already have?
17 out of the manual that I saw, that I've read through already, that I think that we need to implement right now.
But some of those we already have policies that we would just revise?
No. These are well, let me say they're better written. They flow better. They're more professional and articulate. I'll give you an example. With the conferences, and I know it's getting late at the conference, there was one policy that was that was talked about, between staff and board and staff. And you think it would be a really long document. It was 1 page.
Mm-hmm.
It was 1 page, and it's just boom. This is what it says. This is it. This doesn't have to be a lot of work, but we'll because I think it's a great idea. I think policy is probably, we talk about operational components and finances, and I think policies from a board, and Madam President, you've been pushing this for a long time. I think policy right now is a key factor that we need to improve on as a board general manager relationship. So
And that's my intent. If this is something that we can do without having committees to review it ahead of time, I just suspect that there may be some philosophical differences that would make that difficult. But Director Pearson.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So if the general manager feels pretty confident about what he wants to do, why don't we bring one of them to the July meeting, whichever one of the 17 you think is the most important, and bring that as part of our agenda for the July meeting, and we'll see how it goes. If it goes really well, hey, we just march on. If it doesn't go well, then we rethink it and we go from there.
I'm agreeable with that. So when we get to future agenda items, let's make sure we have a motion so we get it on the record. I can do that, but I just want to make sure that we get it on the record, especially since the vice president's not here today.
Yep.
All right. Thank you. I don't think we need any other action. Does anybody else have comment? Okay. Next item.
That's my report. This is the first time we've got to my report in a long time.
I've been trying.
And I really appreciate it.
We have a closed session too. So.
Yeah. So my report is attached, and if there's any questions regarding my report, but also it includes, just really quick, it includes the administration report under Human Resources. Monique and Haley are doing a great job in that area. It includes the different committees, and if you look at facilities and resources, Carlos is doing a lot of work out on the ranch. We did have an internal recruitment. This is really a cool thing I want to talk to you about. So Andy Lyman has accepted to transfer the position from the CSD Water Department. He started his new position, so we had a guy from facilities and resources go over to wastewater. And we had a guy in wastewater wanted to go over in facilities and resources and use his gifts and talents over there. So it's working out really well. I met with staff today on that and went out to the sites, and it's working really well. Bob Gresham's engineers report. Just want to clarify something about the sustainable water facility. Our well levels are above what they were last time this year. However, we are moving forward in anticipation of having to run the sustainable water facility. And I know this is going to drive Director Farmer absolutely crazy. And that seems like an inconsistency. But what I don't want to happen is to have a repeat of last year's rain patterns. If you recall, we didn't get rain till late March, April, okay? Our well levels are okay right now, assuming that we'll start getting rain in October or November, that's great. But what happens if we don't? So we're moving forward on putting the RFP out for the brine hauling company to haul the brine. We're modifying our existing tanks. We're modifying our OOMP. We're making sure that every step of the way we're including the Regional Water Quality Control Board. And these are minimal cost. These don't really cost the district a whole lot to modify these existing tanks. What I don't want to happen is if I need to come to you at some point in time and say, well, this drought is now going well into late fall, early winter, and we haven't got any precipitation, we need to go to stage 3. We need to run the facility. Oh, by the way, we're still scrambling to do all these other things. So here's the parallel track. The parallel track is, at this point in time, the well levels are above normal for last year. However, we are moving forward in anticipation, if we need to run that sustainable water facility. One other thing is not just drought-driven. If we were to experience a catastrophic failure of either one of our aquifers for some reason, our wells went belly up for some reason or something like that, then we'd have to run that facility. So that's kind of where we are with the sustainable water facility. Really quick on the water rights issue, we are in constant dialogue with the State Water Resources Control Board. They have requested some additional information regarding the flows at Palmer Flats, and we're working on getting that information. And so it's active. It's going. We continue to go. We included a copy of the Consumer Confidence Report. Wastewater treatment plant, we go over there, collection system. And then the finance manager's report is included. And Rudy's still here? Rudy's still here to answer any questions. So that's my general manager's report, with knowing we got to go to closed session in a couple minutes. So if there's any reports, any questions I can answer. Oh, and I did include in part of my general manager's report, this is really important. As you know, Cayugas is now being run by CAL FIRE, their fire district. CAL FIRE is the county's fire department. They're under contract to run the counties. There's Templeton has had some issues with their all-volunteer fire department. So what the county has done is embarked on a study, a one-year study. It'll be on next month's agenda to evaluate levels of fire service throughout San Luis Obispo County. Madam President and Vice President wanted to put it on the agenda. I think it's a good idea. Not necessarily asking you to endorse what they're doing, but just for informational purposes only. All the changes that were brought to our attention at the last board meeting regarding the budget, I sent them the following morning or that night. I captured them all, and we've implemented every one of those changes into the budget. We've incorporated those. In addition to that, we went ahead and answered. I asked the questions. We've answered the questions, and we're going to send those responses to the board, like why is there zeros? Why is there a discrepancy between benefits? A bunch of whys. We've answered all those. We'll send them to the board and to the chair and the vice chair, Ted Ziegler, of the Finance Committee. We've linked up the changes in the Sustainable Water Facility budget to the actual operating budget for the Sustainable Water Facility. All those changes have done. Give you an example of a policy decision. So we are projecting, this is unaudited, we're projecting a surplus in the general fund of $140,000. That's what we're projecting, revenues versus expenditures 18-19. That money can be, it's not, we could apply that towards our reserve fund policy, which is 35% of the overall budget. That would be my recommendation. And then we start building those reserves back up in our reserves. So with that, any questions I can answer regarding the general managers? I know it's a pretty long report, but and Rudy's got his finance manager's report in there. And thank you, Madam President.
Let me start by thanking Rudy for the finance manager's report. It's helpful information. You talk about the preparing for the SWF and that's not taking too much time and resources, but I want to make sure that we are spending our limited resources in the smartest way. And do you have a set point where you will say we need to come to the board because part of stage 3 is implementing reductions in water use, and previous stage 3s, we, like the one that was on before, was limiting people to 50 gallons per day, all of which helped us avoid running out of water during that time. So that seems to be a step that would have to happen, that we would want to take before we start turning on something that is not cheap to run, especially now that we have the brine issue. So do you have any idea when it would be that you and your staff would start wanting to worry more, like that you would bring, because it seems to me that the first step is to ask for people to make reductions, and then if we're in October and it still hasn't rained, or November, I mean, do you have a timeline that you're thinking of?
We originally, based on well levels, looked at the end of summer, the beginning of early fall to start the system up. We're monitoring these well levels, starting with Jason and his staff out in the field, district engineer and myself. We're monitoring these really, really closely. So to answer your question, we would not come to you all of a sudden, like has happened in the past, and say, wow, Windsor Bridge East is below 3 feet, the gradient is at negative, and San Simeon's at 10. we would want to evaluate the trends, not only in those three parameters, but also in usage. Since we've lifted stage 3, our usage is starting, if you've noticed, it's starting to tick up. Everybody's still doing a really good job conserving. So we would look at all those things and come to you and say, and we would also look
like in September, are you thinking?
Yes,
or it would have to be earlier than that? Because I want to make sure that I kind of have a handle on what you're thinking time-wise.
Yeah, I think September. And one of the things, again, that concerns me is I monitor NOAA and the National Weather Service. Those are my two ones that I look for trends. And there could be a repeat of, not quite as bad as last year, but there could be a repeat of the late rains again. And that's more what I'm concerned about as opposed to the amount of rain. I'm more concerned about when the rains arrive. Now, when the rains arrive in October and November, this is going to be great, and we won't even be having this conversation. But if they don't, and Bob and I had this conversation this morning, you remember we didn't get our good rains till February. Yeah. I mean, and then it stopped for a couple months. Remember, we were into March and April.
Have we looked at what the demand is during that period and whether we can meet the demand just by asking people to cut back? That's what I'm
right.
Because we are still under the cease and desist and the challenges of dealing with the brine if we turn it on. Not just because we have to declare a stage 3 emergency, but there's a lot of reasons why we would maybe not want to be starting it up this year. And I know there's some reasons to start it up, but this should not be a mishmash, wishy-washy kind of thing. There
it would
should
be a last option.
There should be some trigger that says if we're in October and it hasn't rained and the well levels are X, or something that gives us some sense of assurance that we're making a decision that makes sense because of the amount of money that's involved.
But and I absolutely concur with you. How about next board meeting I come back with that specifically and say, based on the direction I'm getting from you.
That would be wonderful as long as there's concurrence with the rest of the board that would be helpful information. I don't want to be if I'm the only one, then I'll just go bug him personally.
If you recall in the Santa Rosa Aquifer, there was never a methodology. There was that southern hemisphere osmosis, that thing. There was never a methodology on the the Santa Rosa wells to have that. There is a methodology incorporated that we've used for the San Simeon, and so I'll bring that back. And I think it's a good point because well in advance of that, our community needs to know, our board needs to know why we're making this decision. And I just want to say that you're absolutely right. It wouldn't be, well, I feel like running the sustainable facility because we haven't ran in that wouldn't be the reason. It would be because I truly am concerned about the availability of the water supply for the community.
I just don't want to get whiplash, that's all.
Yes, ma'am.
Director Farmer?
I'll endeavor to make this as brief as possible since we only have 15 more minutes. So on the General Manager's Report, page 188, and we go down to the third paragraph where it says, on June 18th, 2018, CCSD received correspondence from the Regional Water Quality Control Board relating to the brine disposal and reduction in sampling. The letter is very positive in nature and will represent a significant reduction in sampling and operation costs for the SWF. And then it says, please see the attached letter dated June 18th. So I turned to page 197 and I looked at this letter, and nowhere does it say anything about the SWF. Your letter, page 197. So you say it's referring to the SWF. This is more like not necessarily semantics, it's what it is. They talk about the emergency water supply project, or the emergency water supply system, or the emergency water supply facility. Those are the terms that are used by the regional board in corresponding with you. They don't talk about the SWF. I think it's important for us to remember that we got a permit for emergency water facility for existing customers only and not for growth. And the SWF is not mentioned here at all. I realize it's a small item. To me, it's not a small item.
Should have been consistent with what the letter said, or John Rocky should have said SWF, so I'll make sure that...
And by the way, speaking of consistency, if we could look under the engineer's report on page 192, once again, he says sustainable water facility, and then it says the advanced water treatment facility, and then further down, of course, it's the emergency water supply order from the regional board for the AWTP. So I think this has been brought up before. Can we, at some point in time, make a determination as to what term we're going to use for this facility and just use one term? I mean, it's like all over the place.
I'll make sure that the district engineer refers it to one thing.
Maybe the board can determine what that is.
Yes, I would say you should make a motion during future agenda items, because I think we tried this once before and it went down in flames. No pun or poetic anything intended, but
it sunk under the weight of.
But it might catch this time, and I tend to agree with you that it's a terminology that is tripping us up and taking time away from the things we really need to focus on. So taking the time to actually just make that decision seems like it would be saving time in the long run. Director Pearson?
And Mr. Howell will sleep better at night.
All right. Your point is well taken, though, Director Farmer. Were you finished?
Yeah, I'll have one more comment on Rudy's, finance manager's report, and that will do it. No, he hasn't spoken yet. Were you going to say anything?
No, I just it is in your packet.
Okay. Cool. I'll make this relatively brief. So on page, well, I'm doing the best I can here. So under page 220, cash balances, and then down at the bottom, CCSD financial audit, June 30th, 2016, the total $4,858,000 and change. And then if we move to the next page, CCSD cash position for May 31st, 2018, it's $2.3 million. So at some point, I'm wondering if Rudy, and I know your time is limited, if there's some way that you can get back to us and let us know what happened in the past 2 years that the cash position of this district went from $4.8 million to $2.3. Where did that $2.5 million go? What was it spent on? What do we have to show for it?
A good portion was we can show you the cost of a lot of it was the SWF.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And next month's finance report will have the 2017 number here, maybe? Since the audit came in?
If you look at my staff report that I wrote regarding the audit, I do make reference to the cash balances. Those numbers are going to be in next month's report, updated to reflect this report. And you're asking very good questions, Director Farmer, and we will address them.
Yet another reason not to buy a truck on the SWF fund.
No, I'm just waiting for us to go to future agenda items.
Okay.
All right, future agenda items.
I would like to say, can I bring a couple policies to the board? Oh, I'm sorry. Can I bring one policy to the board in July?
I think that that's an appropriate. I'd like to make sure we have a motion so we have it on the record, though. We're going to have the general manager bring one policy for the board to consider at the regular July meeting of the board. Is the motion. Is there a second?
I second.
Motion by President Rice, seconded by Director Pearson. Can I have a roll call, please?
Director Rice?
Aye.
Director Pearson?
Aye.
Director Wharton?
Aye.
Director Farmer?
Aye. By the way, is it a Kaiser or an onion when you do the roll call? French, yeah, there we go.
Franche. Oh. Did you have a future agenda item?
I know that Director Pearson has one, but this is something I've been endeavoring to bring up for the last 2-3 months. And then I know people say committees, nothing ever gets accomplished with committees. I think we can all say with some positivity that these new standing committees are really, stepping things up with regard to how we're addressing the important issues for finance and infrastructure. But what I would like to propose is an infrastructure subcommittee for water resourcefulness and grant funding. And the reason I say this because I recently saw an item from State Water Resources that the focus now is less on conservation, which this community obviously is an award winner on, and more efficient use of the diminishing water that's available throughout the state. And if we can find out the best way to make more efficient use, other than just using less, there are ways to use the water that is available more efficiently. And if we do that, one of the props of using water more efficiently is we get grant funding from the state to make up for whatever costs is incurred or whatever. So I feel like, and I know there are very bright people in this community that would be more than willing to serve on, like I say, on a subcommittee that focuses more on a more efficient use of water in this community, and then investigating the grant funding that we can get, because that's a win-win. And like I said, we may have a so-called aging population in this community, but we've got a lot of really bright people, and they think about the future of this planet and the children and the other folks that live here. I think it would be a win-win to do that. That's my humble opinion. We need to take the initiative in this area.
So we'll take that as a motion to put the item that we had on today's agenda on the agenda again?
Well, this is a future agenda item.
Right. Didn't we have this discussion about making a subcommittee today? Then the board decided not to go forward in that direction?
Well, I'd
correct me if I'm wrong, and we can put it on the agenda again. I'm not arguing against putting it on the agenda again, because I think it's a good idea. But
okay, well, at some future meeting, I would like it to be on the agenda, and the sooner the better. Thank you.
Director Pearson?
Okay, so what we discussed was policy, and I think he's talking about something different than just policy.
Okay.
I think he's actually talking about having this committee do some investigative work and that kind of stuff. And I would suggest to Director Farmer that he bring that up at his committee and get them to form that. I think it's a great idea, and get them to form that subcommittee as an ad hoc committee to the infrastructure committee, so that you can get that done. I think that's the place to do it. I don't think that.
Okay, all right. Well,
this body is.
Okay, thank you for that advice.
And if it doesn't go anywhere at your committee, then we can bring it back to the board, and we can as a board as a whole then either support or not.
Right.
Okay.
As the case may be.
Yeah.
So if you need the
infrastructure
backing
committee,
for it, bring it back.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Sounds like a great idea. Thank you,
Okay,
David.
so we got nothing on that one for the future agenda because you're going to take that approach. Thank you for that suggestion. Director Pearson, did you have something else for future agenda? I do want to make a motion to have a discussion relating to the schoolhouse. I'd like to get an update from pros on the issue of placing the schoolhouse.
Yeah, it's on their agenda for
next week. Yeah. So maybe we can have on our July agenda, they can report back to us what happened at their meeting and if they got anywhere.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm good with that.
That's kind of what I was trying to get from Ms. Soto when she
spoke,
and it just sounds like we're moving at the pace of government with the FPPC into how we can work around those covenants on the property. And
Seems to me the board discussion might be fruitful, especially once the pros has their discussion next week, that it might be helpful.
Yeah, and with Director Berger here, it'd probably be worthwhile.
Well, I don't think he can sit in on it.
No, he can't.
He can't. Yeah, he's got the interest in it.
On that discussion.
Yeah.
He'd have to be out. So I mean,
okay.
Now's a
Yeah.
great time to talk about
But
it.
but it's not on the agenda right now.
I know.
But so we could put this on a future agenda. Mr. Carmel?
If I can interject.
Please.
Really, it's up to the Beringers to initiate that process of communicating with the FPPC and getting a specific written opinion. It's not something the board can get.
I was more concerned about moving the schoolhouse, not the FPPC issue. Me personally.
I mean, just the general concept of moving it, not necessarily specifically.
Right, because I know they're under a time limit. They're under a time limit.
I misunderstood.
Because I don't think it's appropriate for a body to write a letter to FPPC that's kind of outside the lines, so to speak.
That's where I thought we were going, so that's why I interjected.
Yeah, I mean, it might be part of the discussion that happens, but it's not going to be something this board can I don't think it's appropriate for a board to take that kind of action. That's an individual voter, citizen, right?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. Director Pearson? Okay, I make a motion that we adjourn to closed session and we extend the meeting until we are able to complete that closed session, which should only take probably 15. Yeah, so we have 2 items on the closed session. Is there any comment on closed session?
I would go 30 minutes.
Okay, so 30 minutes till 6:30. Can we have a roll call vote? Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, so let's have a roll call. Is everybody aye?
Aye.
Aye.
I did.
Wharton, and then it's unanimous, which is what we needed. So 6:30. We're adjourned to closed session. Thank you, everyone who's still here. Dawn and Dwayne, the Ds. Is it here in the fireside room?